Chapter 2581. Male. The chubby monk stood solemnly at the side while everyone was offering incense. He did not say a word and put his palms together. When he saw Chu Li handing over the prayer beads, he widened his eyes and looked at him in surprise. Chu Li said, "I would like to meet Master Hui Guang. This is his personal item. Almsgiver, please don't joke." The chubby monk put his palms together and bowed. How could Master Hui Guang's keepsake be lost outside, especially in the hands of such a young man in front of him? Chu Li smiled and said nothing. "May I know your name?" the chubby monk said helplessly. Chu Li said, "I am Chu Li. This prayer bead is a gift from He Jin from 5 Thunder Peak. Almsgiver Shao, please follow me." The chubby monk looked solemn. When he heard the name 5 Thunder Peak, he did not dare to be careless anymore. He became more careful and invited Chu Li to a quiet monastery nearby. He let Chu Li rest first, and he would immediately report to his master. Chu Li stood in the monastery with his hands behind his back and listened to the chanting coming from not far away. He felt calm and found a sense of familiarity. Although this was not the lower realm, it felt no different from the lower realm. It was like the Temple of Autumn in the past. It was solemn and the chanting was endless. He wondered how the Temple of Autumn was now. He suddenly felt a sense of longing. Ever since he left the temple, he had been busy and unknowingly arrived here. He was getting further and further away from the temple, but his heart was calmer than when he was in the temple. Pursuing the prosperity of the world was indeed more suitable for him than staying in the temple to understand the profound Dharma. It would not be easy to meet Monk Hui Guang. After all, he was an eminent monk of the Great Mercy Temple. Not everyone could meet him as they pleased. Chu Li was not the world-famous Chu Li now. He was just an unknown nobody. After about 10 minutes, the chubby monk strode over and bowed with his palms together. "Almsgiver Chu, please follow me. Master Hui Guang has arrived." Chu Li bowed with his palms together. The two followed the quiet path to another monastery. They pushed the door and entered. A thin, middle-aged monk was standing there in a daze. He was staring at a cluster of flowers in the southwest corner of the courtyard. He was of medium build and wore a loose robe, which made him look a little thin. After the chubby monk came in, he stood aside respectfully and did not disturb him. Chu Li tactfully kept quiet and observed Monk Hui Guang with the omniscient mirror. He did not look like someone who practiced martial arts. He was thin and frail and did not look strong. Furthermore, his appearance was mediocre. He would not be able to attract anyone's attention if he stood in the crowd. His temperament was also ordinary. He closed his eyes to sense, only to find that it was empty, as if there was no one in front of him. When he opened his eyes, he could see again. Clearly, he had entered the void and was one with heaven and earth. It was not normal to stay in the state of oneness of heaven and man at all times. Clearly, his cultivation had reached the state of perfection. Originally, he could also reach this step, but after coming to this world, it was as if there was a barrier between him and the world, and he could not enter again. It was as if this world was rejecting him. He vaguely felt that this might be because he was not an ascended person, which was why Shao-Chi did not behave so strangely. Although the heaven-inspecting token was wonderful, it had its limitations. Sigh. Monk Hui Guang let out a long sigh and shook his head as if he had just woken up. He turned to look at Chu Li, pressed his palms together, and folded his sleeves, revealing the prayer beads on his wrist. Did He Jin give this to Almsgiver Chu? Chu Li pressed his palms together. Yes. Monk Hui Guang shook his head. This is indeed Brother He's way of doing things. Chu Li said, "I'm sorry to make things difficult for you, great master. Almsgiver Chu, you want to cultivate more advanced martial arts, right?" Monk Hui Guang asked. Chu Li nodded. "You're from Taishang Peak, but you're not cultivating the martial arts of Taishang Peak?" Monk Hui Guang's eyes suddenly lit up like two sharp blades piercing into his body. He naturally defended himself and circulated his inner force. Monk Hui Guang revealed a smile. Chu Li said, "My wife is a disciple of Taishang Peak, but I'm not. Great Mercy Temple's advanced martial arts require a sufficient amount of dermic-based cultivation. It's difficult for those who are not monks to understand." Monk Huiguang said. The people of the secular world can't match their state of mind, so naturally, it's difficult for them to cultivate. Chu Li said, before we came here, my wife and I met Master Tianyu from the Supreme Temple. Master Tianyu. Monk Huiguang nodded. The eminent monks of the Supreme Temple have strict discipline. It's admirable. Chu Li smiled. Master Tianyu once taught me a set of palm leaf scripture. It's mysterious and unpredictable. It really broadened my horizons. It made me yearn for Buddhist martial arts. Monk Huiguang nodded. I see. Almsgiver Chu, do you want to abide by the precepts and cultivate? Chu Li slowly shook his head. I have worries in my heart. I can't become a monk. I can only cultivate at home. The secular world is boundless. You can't get away from it. Monk Huiguang frowned and looked at him, then sighed. This is a pity. With brother he's guarantee. I can accept you as a disciple. Enter my temple to cultivate, and you'll definitely achieve something. His eyes were sharp. He could already see that Chu Li's character was profound. His intelligence was amazing. He was a seed of Buddhist virtue. If carefully cultivated, it would not be difficult for him to become an eminent monk of the generation, strengthening the Great Mercy Temple. Unfortunately, Chu Li did not have the ambition to become a monk. He could not focus. It would be difficult for him to achieve great success in cultivating the dermic base. For someone with his qualifications, it was tantamount to a reckless waste of resources. From Monk Huiguang's words and actions, Chu Li could tell that Jin must have come to look for Monk Huiguang in advance to explain his background. He could be said to be innocent. There was nothing to suspect. Monk Huiguang also had the intention to accept a disciple, but he could not become a monk himself, so he cast Shao Qi and the others aside. As for becoming a monk first and then renouncing asceticism after cultivating, it was a joke. How could the Great Mercy Temple allow him to come and go as he pleased? Once he renounced asceticism, his dermic base would definitely regress. His martial arts would also return to its realm. It would be a waste of effort. Chu Li shook his head. My ambition does not lie here. I hope Great Master can fulfill my wish. Monk Huiguang looked regretful, then sighed. Forget it. If that's the case, then you can become a monk disciple. Thank you, Great Master. Chu Li smiled. Monk Huiguang said, until now, I have 3 disciples. I've never had a monk disciple. You're the first. Chu Li hesitated for a moment, then pressed his palms together and bowed deeply. Greetings, Master. He did not expect Monk Huiguang to accept him as a disciple so readily. He initially thought that there would be a set of martial arts to send him away as a favor to Jin, so he was caught off guard. However, he soon calmed down and made a decision. Although he had a few masters and had always been proud of himself after becoming the world's #1, the current situation was different. If he did not have a master, he would not be able to obtain a higher level of martial arts. It would be difficult for him to move forward. If he wanted to be free and unfettered, if he wanted to protect his woman, he had to cultivate the best antique study and become a top-notch master. Monk Huiguang raised his hand and smiled. All right, from today onwards, Chu Li, you're my monk disciple. Chu Li nodded. Monk Huiguang sighed. It's possible for a monk disciple to cultivate peerless martial arts, but it's 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than an outer disciple. You must be prepared. Chapter 25:82. The fat monk stood at the side and stared at Chu Li with wide eyes. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that someone would be able to become martial Uncle Huiguang's disciple with a string of Buddhist prayer beads. Others might not know how powerful martial Uncle Huiguang was, but as a disciple of the Great Mercy Temple, he was well aware of it. Although he was an outer temple disciple, it was not that the outer temple and the inner temple did not interact with each other. In fact, they were very close. The affairs of the inner temple disciples were mostly handled by the outer temple disciples. If the outer temple disciples had any problems, they would usually ask for help from the inner temple disciples. The inner temple and the outer temple merged into one, and they were all disciples of the Great Mercy Temple. Even when the outer temple disciples traveled around the world, they could do whatever they wanted because they were disciples of the Great Mercy Temple. Outsiders dared not offend them. He wanted to become an inner temple disciple, but unfortunately, due to his limited aptitude, his future in martial arts was limited. Therefore, he could only give up and cultivate the dermic base. When the dermic base was cultivated to the extreme, divine power would be born, and it would be better than martial arts. When he saw Chu Li easily become Master Hui Guang's disciple, he was extremely envious. Master Hui Guang was an outstanding disciple of the Hui generation. Unfortunately, because he rarely left the temple, he did not make a name for himself and was unknown. This was also because Master Chu Li's dermic base was profound and he did not seek fame in the world. There were many unknown monks like Master Hui Guang in the inner temple. Therefore, the Great Mercy Temple was unfathomable and feared by outsiders. Chu Li could become Master Hui Guang's disciple. Although he was just a disciple, it was still a great opportunity that made people envious. Master Hui Guang turned to look at the fat monk and smiled. Ding Kong, arrange a monastery for Chu Li. Yes, Master Hui Guang. The fat Ding Kong monk pressed his palms together. Can junior brother Chu Li have the sky courtyard at the west of the temple? Yes, very good. Master Hui Guang nodded. Chu Li will be my disciple from now on. Help him if he needs anything and take care of him. Yes, yes. Ding Kong monk smiled at Chu Li and nodded. Master Hui Guang, don't worry. Leave it to me. I'll make sure junior brother Chu Li is comfortable and can cultivate in peace. That's good. Master Hui Guang nodded and smiled. That's it then. I'll come again tomorrow. He nodded at Chu Li, turned around, and glided away. Chu Li pressed his palms together and watched him leave. Looking at his steady footsteps, it seemed that he did not know martial arts. If not for the fact that he could sense people, he would have been fooled. When Monk Hui Guang's figure disappeared, Monk Ding Kong turned around and chuckled. Junior brother Chu, congratulations. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Thank you, brother Ding Kong. Ding Kong chuckled and said, It's a pity. If he had directly accepted the precepts, he would have become senior brother Hui Guang's personal disciple. That would have been incredible. Senior brother Hui Guang's 3 disciples are all powerful experts. Chu Li smiled. There's no hurry. I missed such a great opportunity. What a pity. Monk Ding Kong was extremely anxious for Chu Li. Let's go. Let's go to the Skyline Courtyard. It's much more spacious there. We can cultivate there. He strode out of the temple and walked forward along the quiet path. After a few twists and turns, he finally arrived at a temple on the westernmost side of the mountain peak. The temple was spacious. At a glance, Chu Li estimated that it was more than 300 square meters. There was a circular martial arts field in the middle of the courtyard. It was surrounded by flowering shrubs. Fresh flowers bloomed, and a delicate fragrance lingered in the air. The courtyard was clean and tidy. Chu Li walked into 3 rooms. The main hall was in the center with simple decorations. One of the rooms was a study room, while the other was a bedroom. The furniture was simple, but it gave off a refreshing smell. It was obvious that the furniture was made of high-quality wood. No one has lived here before. Monk Ding Kong smiled. It's a newly built courtyard. Junior brother Chu, you've come at the right time. It just so happens that it belongs to you. Are you satisfied? Chu Li nodded with satisfaction. The environment was quiet and spacious. It was suitable for cultivating martial arts alone. You can rest assured that no one will disturb you here. I'll personally find an obedient acolyte to deliver your meals and clean the place for you. Monk Ding Kong smiled. Although there's a difference between being a monk and a monk, there's one good thing about it. You don't have to attend morning and evening classes. Chu Li smiled. Are morning and evening classes troublesome? Monk Ding Kong shook his head. He looked like he was having a headache. Chu Li knew at first glance that Monk Ding Kong's stubbornness and bad habits were still there. He still had a long way to go before he could become an eminent monk. However, he had a lively personality. Although he looked chubby and honest, he was also a little cunning. Let's go. I'll bring you out to have a look at the Great Mercy Temple. Monk Ding Kong smiled. Not everyone can enter the inner temple of the Great Mercy Temple. Chu Li smiled. We can enter the inner temple? Outsiders can't enter, but we can. Monk Ding Kong said. It's in the mountains over there. He pointed to the east. Chu Li nodded. He was also very curious about the inner temple of the Great Mercy Temple. The outer temple did not have any decorations or formations. Moreover, the monks in the temple did not have a high cultivation level. They looked like ordinary people. He only felt a strange fluctuation from a few monks. Based on his senses, these monks were hiding their strength. They looked no different from ordinary people and did not cultivate martial arts. In fact, they had a high cultivation level. Through the omniscient mirror, he could see the outer temple of the Great Mercy Temple clearly. The basilica, the monastery, and the cottages. The basilica was bigger, and there were more monasteries. Other than the quiet environment and the lingering fragrance, it was no different from other Buddhist temples. He could also see the inner temple of the Great Mercy Temple in his mind, but it was blocked by an invisible force. He could not see the situation inside the temple. Through the omniscient mirror, he could only see a giant Buddha shining with golden light sitting cross-legged in the void. The golden light was so dazzling that he could not look at it directly. He put away the omniscient mirror and looked at the outside instead of the inside. What he saw was different. It was just a temple that looked old, and it was only half the size of the outer temple. From the outside, the monastery looked much older than the outer temple. If he looked further inside, it would be blocked by the golden light. He could feel a huge power. The golden light was like the scorching sun. It was so bright that it hurt his eyes. He became more curious. He would not miss the chance to go in and take a look. Ding Kong Monk looked chubby, but his light body technique was extraordinary. His inner energy cultivation level was low, but did not hinder his speed. It was obvious that he was talented in light body technique. He was like a galloping horse. The two of them left the outer temple and traveled 100 miles along the mountain range. They arrived at a temple halfway up the mountain. This is the inner temple. Ding Kong Monk proudly pointed at the temple. It's filled with martial arts masters. Chuli smiled. They're all martial arts masters? Of course. Ding Kong Monk said proudly. Once you enter the inner temple, you'll become one even if you're not a martial arts master. Junior brother Chu, no matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to defeat them. Chuli smiled and shook his head. Ding Kong Monk took a deep breath and puffed out his chest. He coughed softly and walked forward to the front of the temple stairs. The temple's door was half closed. He went forward and knocked on the door. Soon, a young novice monk opened the door. When he saw it was him, he smiled. Senior brother Ding Kong. Chapter 2583. Ding Kong puffed out his chest and coughed softly. He then said in a pompous manner, Junior brother Ding Zhun, let me introduce you. This is Master's junior brother Hui Guang's newly accepted disciple, Chu Li. The young novice monk Ding Zhun looked at Chu Li and was surprised. Master Hui Guang accepted a disciple? Master Hui Guang saw junior brother Chu Li's high aptitude and accepted him as a disciple without hesitation. Ding Kong shook his head and sighed. If I had such aptitude, I would have entered the inner temple a long time ago. He turned his head and smiled at Chu Li. This is junior brother Ding Zhun, Master Hui Wen's disciple. Senior brother Ding Zhun. Chu Li bowed with pressed palms. He felt awkward, but when he thought about Ding Zhun's age, he felt at ease. No matter how young Ding Zhun was, he was much older than him. It was fine to call him senior brother. Moreover, Ding Zhun looked young, but his cultivation level was not inferior to Chu Li's. He was just a young novice monk from the Great Mercy Temple. He realized that he did not know enough about the Great Mercy Temple and had underestimated them. In such a chaotic world, they were able to make a name for themselves and have a transcendent status. Sure enough, they had their own unique characteristics. However, the reputation of the Great Mercy Temple did not match their actual strength. It was obvious that they had concealed their true strength. I've become a senior brother too. Ding Zhun grinned with a hint of naivety and foolishness. You're Master Hui Guang's disciple. You've offended him. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Little novice monk Ding Zhun smiled and said, Hui Guang Shibua is very strict. Back then, Ding Jian Shixiang and Ding Shi Shixiang suffered too much, and we all sympathized with them. Now that their suffering is over, they have surpassed us. I'm a disciple. I won't be that strict. Chu Li smiled. He saw that this young novice monk Ding Jun had no heart and was innocent. He could not help but feel close to him. That's not necessarily true. Ding Jun shook his head. Master Huiguang is very serious. As long as you become his disciple, regardless of whether you're a disciple or an inner disciple, he'll have strict requirements. Don't think it'll be easy. Junior brother Ding Jun, don't scare junior brother Chu Li. Ding Kong chuckled and said, if you want to learn, how can you not suffer? Someone like me can't even bear to suffer, so I should be content. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Ding Jun walked in and asked with a smile, does junior brother Chu want to stay in the inner temple? Chu Li shook his head. Ding Kong said, let's stay in our outer temple first at Tianxin Courtyard. Ding Jun Xixiao, you can come here often to compare martial arts. All right. Ding Jun agreed readily. He also sensed that Chu Li's cultivation level was similar to his, so Chu Li would be an excellent opponent to spar with. The three of them passed through the temple gate and headed east. They didn't go to the main hall, but to a training field at the side. On the spacious training field, there were more than 20 bald monks practicing martial arts. All of them wore short robes and had bare arms. Under the sunlight, their bodies shone with a faint light, as if they were made of copper. Some of them were soft, as if they were dancing. Some were methodical, some were elegant, and some were clumsy and slow. Chu Li saw a visible ray of light flying out from their palms. Chu Li became solemn. This was not an ordinary martial art. The ray of light that could be formed when energy left one's body was so pure that it surpassed the ordinary level of palm energy. It was completely different from the color of qi. The color of the protective aura was due to the blood qi. It was a unique cultivation method. Only its defensive ability was achieved by sacrificing its sharpness. If the palm force was like the protective aura, then it would be completely powerless. Chu Li's current palm energy could not condense into color because it was not pure enough. Even if palm leaf scripture was circulating and purifying his inner energy, it still could not achieve the effect of external manifestation. These are the senior brothers of the Ding generation. Ding Jun turned his head and introduced them. They practice our introductory martial arts. Introductory martial arts? Chu Li smiled bitterly. Ding Jun smiled. A truly profound martial art requires a profound dermic base and cultivation level. It's not enough to just rely on hard cultivation. Without enough dermic base, one will go astray, so one can only practice introductory martial arts. I've been chanting scriptures now, and I still have to go to the outer temple for morning and evening lessons every day. That's right. Ding Kong chuckled. Ding Jun is worried to death. Ding Jun frowned. I'd rather practice martial arts for a day than stay in the temple hall and chant scriptures for 2 hours. Humph, Ding Kong said. Your mortal heart has not faded yet. You still have to suffer. When you like to attend morning and evening classes, only then will you truly understand the Buddhist Dharma. Only then will you be able to practice more profound martial arts. Sigh. Master said the same thing. Ding Jun sighed helplessly. I really don't know when this will end. Junior brother Chu, you're the best. As a layman disciple, you don't have to practice dermic base like us. Chu Li smiled and did not say anything. Whether it was in the lower realm or on first heaven, Buddhist martial arts focused on dermic base cultivation. It was the same for the Tempest Temple back then. Without dermic base cultivation, their martial arts could not reach a profound realm. If it was martial arts cultivation level, Chu Li would not dare to boast. However, he was very confident in dermic base cultivation level. He stared at the monks on the martial arts field. He watched as their every movement emitted rays of colorful lights. His face was full of smiles, and he looked forward to the martial arts of the Great Mercy Temple. However, he was a layman disciple, so he might not be able to practice the top-notch martial arts of the Great Mercy Temple. He might only learn some beginner martial arts, but even these martial arts were powerful enough. He turned to look at Ding Jun. Senior brother Ding Jun, what are the top-notch martial arts of the Great Mercy Temple? There are many. Ding Jun smiled. It depends on one's aptitude. Some practice dragon and elephant wisdom. Some practice celestial dragon power. Some practice crouching tiger seal. And others. Every martial art of the Great Mercy Temple is top-notch. It only depends on one's cultivation level, comprehension, and aptitude. If one cultivates it well, he or she will be invincible. If not, it's useless no matter how powerful the martial art is. Chuli nodded slowly. He had heard of dragon and elephant wisdom from the outside. It was a unique martial art that maximized the strength and speed of one's body. One's speed was as fast as lightning, and one's strength was infinite. No one could block it, and one could only avoid it. What was even more shocking was that this ability increased one's intelligence. Once it was used, even a fool would immediately become a calm and intelligent person. With one glance, one could see through the opponent's weakness and kill them with one blow. No one could defeat it. Unless one's cultivation level was far higher than his, there was no way to win. Such a unique martial art was famous in the martial arts world. Unfortunately, this martial art had high aptitude requirements. There were only a few people in the Great Mercy Temple who cultivated this martial art. However, everyone who cultivated this martial art was a top-notch master. As for Celestial Dragon Power, Crouching Tiger Seal, he had never heard of it. But if Dingzhan said so, then it must be a wondrous skill that was no less powerful than Dragon and Elephant Wisdom skill. He guessed that the Great Mercy Temple had always kept a low profile and purposefully did not let others know about it. It's a pity that you can't cultivate these martial arts. Dingzhan chuckled. Chuli shook his head helplessly. Ding Kong scoffed. Dingzhan, you're really bad. Since you know you can't cultivate them, why are you still talking? Dingzhan smiled. However, layman disciples can also cultivate profound martial arts. There are many unique martial arts that depend on Junior Brother Chu's aptitude. Tell me about it, Ding Kong hurriedly said. He was most envious of these martial arts, and envied Chu Li for being able to cultivate them. Listening to them could satisfy his craving. Dingzhan said, for example, the Void Dragon Catcher Palm and the 3 Stabilizing Palm are extremely powerful. Only these? Ding Kong was disappointed. Chapter 2584. Yes, let's look around. Ding Kong quickly nodded. Let's see which martial arts can be cultivated and choose one that is as powerful as possible. With Junior Brother Chu's qualifications, you'll definitely be successful. Chuli smiled. Dingzhan smiled. Junior Brother Chu might be able to break through the barriers and defeat the inner disciples as a lay disciple. Ding Kong smiled and nodded. Yes, you should have this ambition. He was joking. If a lay disciple could defeat an inner disciple, there would be no need to cultivate Buddhism. It would be more tiring than cultivating martial arts. It was impossible for a lay disciple to defeat an inner disciple. Wait here. I'll go and find out which martial arts is the strongest. Dingzhan was an impatient person. He turned and strode away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. In the distance, the martial arts field was still bustling with activity. 24 monks were practicing their antique studies. Chuli was extremely envious as he watched. His inner energy transformed into various colored rays of light that appeared before his eyes. When would he be able to achieve the same level of cultivation purity? Ding Kong smiled. Junior Brother Dingzhan is a warm-hearted person. He's someone worth befriending. There's no harm in befriending him. Thank you, Senior Brother Ding Kong. Chuli pressed his palms together. Ding Kong waved his hand and said arrogantly, I'm the one who brought you here. How can I not take care of you? However, when you become a master in the future, you'll have to help me. Chuli smiled. Of course. Ding Kong said, Junior Brother Chu, you're too foolish. You shouldn't be a lay disciple. It'd be better to become an inner disciple. Master Huiguang doesn't accept disciples easily, and he's good at teaching disciples. It's a waste to be a lay disciple. It's such a waste. He shook his head as he spoke. His face was filled with regret and unwillingness. Chuli smiled. I still have my wife. How can I become a monk? Wife? Ding Kong stared at Chuli. He did not expect Chu Li to be married at such a young age. Chuli said, My wife is now a disciple of 5 Thunder Peak. 5 Thunder Peak? That's incredible. Ding Kong was shocked. 5 Thunder Peak is a super sect that is on par with our Great Mercy Temple. It seems that your wife's qualifications are top-notch. Chu nodded slowly. Then all the more you should become an inner disciple. If you only become a secular disciple, you will be left behind by your wife in the future. You won't be able to raise your head in front of a woman. Ding Kong shook his head in disapproval. Chu could not help but laugh. If I become a monk, how am I going to explain this to Madam? Well, Ding Kong chuckled and said, you don't have to renounce asceticism. You can break your vows. Chu said, the temple will not let you off easily. The bigger the Buddhist temple, the stricter the rules. The disciples had to abide by the precepts. Although it was not as strict as the Supreme Temple, it was already extremely strict for ordinary people. Once they broke the precepts, they would be punished. A light punishment would be facing the wall, a heavy punishment would be death, and in between there might be a punishment of crippling their martial arts. Ding Kong said, if you violate this insignificant rule, at most you will be demoted to a secular disciple. Chu raised his eyebrows. He immediately understood Ding Kong's idea. He would first become an inner disciple and master his martial arts. In the future, when he was with Shao Qi, the Great Mercy Temple would at most demote him to a layman's disciple. They would not cripple his martial arts or expel him from the Great Mercy Temple. He thought about it and shook his head with a sigh. Forget it, but there are benefits to being a layman's disciple. Ding Kong sighed. If an inner disciple wants to master advanced martial arts, they need to cultivate their dharmic base for a long time. They can only master it when their dharmic base reaches a certain level. Although laymen can't master the most advanced martial arts, they don't need to cultivate their dharmic base that hard. Chu nodded silently. Unfortunately, he was not afraid of not having enough dharmic base. If he really entered the temple, he might be able to master advanced martial arts very quickly. Unfortunately, he quickly shook his head and suppressed his thoughts. It was better for him to be a layman's disciple. Ding Zhun hurried over and said with a smile, I've found it. There are too many martial arts that laymen can cultivate. I've found the top ones. The Void Dragon Capture Technique is the most powerful. It includes the Void Dragon Capture Technique and the Void Dragon Capture Technique. It's powerful. Junior brother Chu, it's best if you cultivate this. Chu smiled. Thank you, senior brother Ding Zhun. The young novice monk Ding Zhun said excitedly, don't mention it. But you still have to listen to Master Hui Guang in whatever you want to cultivate. He's the best at teaching disciples. Senior brother Ding Jian and senior brother Ding Shi are the two strongest in our generation. Listening to Master Hui Guang is the right choice. Chu nodded lightly. He saw that the young novice monk Ding Zhun was sincere and had a high cultivation level. His knowledge was not shallow. Since he said that the Void Dragon Capture Technique was the strongest, it must not be wrong. Chu followed Ding Kong and Ding Zhun to look at the martial arts field for a while. Then, they arrived at Ding Zhun's temple. It was an old temple that was only half the size of Sky Heart Courtyard. It was quiet and filled with the vicissitudes of life. The traces of time could be clearly seen. It was not as spacious as Sky Heart Courtyard, but staying here was like being isolated from time and the world. One could completely calm down. Chu was amazed. This aura was not a formation, but a strange power. He stood in the inner temple of the Great Mercy Temple, but he still could not use the omniscient mirror. An invisible power was suppressing the omniscient mirror. It was as if his body was bound by an invisible power, and the omniscient mirror could not break out. He could not figure out what this strange power was, but he was extremely afraid of it. It was dangerous, and he dared not make any strange moves. Chu and Ding Kong left the inner temple after they were done visiting the temple. Chu felt that he had gained a lot from this trip. He had subconsciously developed a sense of reverence for the Great Mercy Temple. He valued the martial arts of the Great Mercy Temple even more, and his expectations had also increased. The next morning, Chu stood still in the courtyard. The palm leaf scripture was circulating in his mind and turned into transparent lotus flowers. Not only did it brighten the Buddhas and demons in his mind, but the transparent lotus flowers also floated out of his mind and purified his inner energy. The sound of footsteps was heard. Monk Hui Guang slowly walked into the courtyard. His gray robe fluttered in the wind, and he looked simple and unadorned. Chu Li pressed his palms together and bowed. Monk Hui Guang waved his hand and said, "After today, you will also follow the outer temple for morning and evening classes." Chu Li nodded. Monk Hui Guang said, "Dharma is the foundation of the martial arts of the Great Mercy Temple. Without Dharma, there is no need to mention anything. Even if you're a monk disciple, you need to understand Dharma. You just don't need to abide by the precepts." Chu Li nodded. Monk Hui Guang looked at Chu Li and said, "You already have the foundation of what you have learned. From today onwards, you must first wash away your cultivation level before you start to cultivate the Void Dragon Capture technique." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He did not expect that he would really have to cultivate the Void Dragon Capture technique. Monk Hui Guang said, "I will first teach you the marrow cleansing technique." As he spoke, he extended his hand and pointed at Chu Li. Chu Li did not have time to react, and his forehead was already touched. Boom! A dull sound was heard, and a sudden clap of thunder sounded in his mind. A flickering golden light suddenly appeared and slowly spread out. It turned into a huge scroll in the void of his mind and slowly unfolded. Chu Li immediately saw what was written on the scroll. It was a heart technique incantation. It looked very simple. Cultivating the marrow cleansing technique requires a clear heart and mind. You cannot be afraid. Once you are afraid, you can easily hurt your body or even destroy it. Monk Hui Guang said, "This requires enough aptitude and comprehension." Chu Li slowly nodded. "Thank you, Master." The marrow cleansing technique will dissolve your inner energy and strengthen your body. Cultivating the Void Dragon Capture technique will be twice the result with half the effort. Monk Hui Guang said, "Once you have cultivated the marrow cleansing technique, I will teach you the Void Dragon Capture technique." "Yes." Chu Li nodded. He knew that Monk Hui Guang was afraid that he would be too eager for immediate benefits. Chapter 2585. Monk Hui Guang muttered, "The marrow cleansing technique changes your original cultivation level, but this transformation isn't a bad thing. Instead, it builds a firm foundation. You have the body of the soul lotus, so you already have a solid foundation, but it's not impenetrable. If you cultivate the marrow cleansing technique, you might be able to cultivate an impenetrable body." Chu Li smiled. Monk Hui Guang said, "Although your previous cultivation level was not shallow, it was too heterogeneous. Once you cultivate on this foundation, you'll become nondescript, and it'll be difficult to cultivate to the perfect state." Chu Li replied, "Yes." Monk Hui Guang sighed. "Your aptitude and talent are excellent. Cultivate well." Chu Li pressed his palms together. Monk Hui Guang turned around and left slowly. Chu Li sat on the bed and began to cultivate the marrow cleansing technique. His surroundings were quiet, and no one disturbed him. He knew that Ding Kong was doing his morning class at this time. The marrow cleansing technique was just an incantation, and its meaning was simple and comprehensive. However, it was a difficult thing to do. It required a strong state of mind, no one, no self, and to completely forget oneself. For those who lacked the power of meditation, or those whose state of mind was not strong enough, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. The more one wanted to forget oneself, the more distracting thoughts there would be. Chu Li's meditation skill was very profound, and his dharmic base was also very high, so it was easy for him to achieve this. In the state of no self, he did not know the passage of time, did not know the troubles of the world, and everything turned into nothingness. After a while, a strange power surged from the bottom of his feet, warm and numb, breaking his state of mind. As soon as the distracting thoughts were gone, the power disappeared. Chu Li secretly praised the mystery of the marrow cleansing technique. It reacted so quickly, it was simple yet effective. He immersed himself in nothingness again, and the strange power was born from the bottom of his feet again, and then moved up his legs. Along the way, the inner energy in the acupuncture points was melted by this power. His legs felt warm as if they had disappeared, and his heart was at peace. It moved up his calves to his dantian, and quickly transformed the inner energy in his dantian into a warm power. This power became stronger and faster, from his dantian to his chest, then to his neck, and finally stopped at the middle of his eyebrows. Then it went back down, and he repeated the previous path. His body was immersed in this warm energy, as if he was soaking in a hot spring. It was even more comfortable than a hot spring, lazy and warm, indescribable joy and comfort that he could not extricate himself from. However, this force was slowly diminishing and becoming weaker. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe it, and found that it was drilling into his flesh and blood. Then it passed through his flesh and into his bones, and even into his bone marrow. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, the bones were as thick as flesh. After the strange energy seeped into them, the flesh turned silver and shone brightly. When the energy completely melted and disappeared, the color of the bone marrow turned from silver to white again. However, it was slightly more transparent and brighter. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly woke up. There was a knock on the door. He took a step to the door and opened it. He realized that the inner energy in his body had disappeared, as if he had never practiced martial arts before. However, his body was as light as a feather, as if his entire body had become weightless, as if he had disappeared. He had broken free from the shackles of his physical body, leaving only his soul behind. With one step, he actually crossed from inside of the house to the door. This was not Qin Gong, but it was better than Qin Gong. Ding Kong stood outside the door and smiled. "Junior brother Chu, I've received the news. I'll bring you to your evening class." Chu Li lifted his head to look at the sky. The setting sun dyed the sky heart courtyard red. Chu Li pressed his palms together. "Thank you, senior brother Ding Kong." Ding Kong waved his hand. "Let's go." He suddenly looked at Chu Li and stopped in his tracks. "Huh, your martial arts is gone?" Chu Li nodded. "It's gone. You're going to start practicing martial arts so soon." Ding Kong sighed. "But as a monk disciple, you still have to do morning and evening classes. It's not easy." He showed a sympathetic expression. Until now, he still felt that the morning and evening classes were a huge torture. Every day felt like a year. Chu Li smiled. The two of them left the Sky Heart courtyard and headed east. They arrived at the basilica. There were already more than 200 monks standing in front of the basilica. They were all dressed in spotless yellow robes. Chu Li's robe was still his original white robe, which was particularly eye-catching. Chu Li did not care, and the monks around him did not look at him either. They all kept their eyes closed and stood still. Monk Ding Kong brought him to the back and stood still. Smack! The sound of incense slapping was heard. The monk at the front slowly walked up the stairs and entered the basilica. Following that, the other monks walked up the stairs one by one. Chu Li and Monk Ding Kong were the last to enter. The basilica was already filled with monks sitting on a yellow cattail hassock. Chu Li sat on a cattail hassock as well. His heart instantly calmed down. The atmosphere in the basilica was solemn. The statue of Buddha sitting at the northernmost side shone with golden light. Not only was it golden on the outside, but it was also golden on the inside. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, the golden light was emitted from the inside out, illuminating the basilica. Under this golden light, the omniscient mirror could not see the minds of the people around it. It was suppressed by the golden light to the point that it could only see the outside, but not the inside. Chu Li did not know what kind of power this golden light was, but it was very strange. Infinite life, scripture. An old monk stood in front of the statue. His eyebrows were all white, and his face was as red as a baby's. His white eyebrows were like two long horsetail whisks that drooped down to his cheeks. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of a wooden fish was heard. The monks started chanting. The chanting was uniform and filled the entire basilica. It was everywhere. Chu Li also chanted the infinite life scripture softly. He closed his eyes, but the omniscient mirror did not dissipate. It was still observing the monks and the old monk standing under the statue. The old monk looked thin and frail. He was already old and did not know any martial arts, but he made Chu Li shiver. He felt a bone-piercing chill. It was obvious that he had an amazing power, but he did not show it. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that the old monk did not know any martial arts. Looking at the way he stood there, he knew that he did not know any martial arts. He did not even know any martial arts that strengthened his body. However, it was this ordinary old monk who possessed an earth-shattering power. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Chu Li. It was a calm gaze, but Chu Li felt a great pressure. It was obvious that the old monk had sensed his clairvoyance. This must have been due to his powerful spiritual energy and subtle senses. Chu Li's gaze suddenly froze. He opened his eyes and looked at a young monk. The young monk's body floated up gently, emitting a green light. His feet were 2 inches off the ground as he stood in the void. The green light surrounded his body. The young monk's unusual appearance seemed to be a trigger. Then, 3 more monks appeared. One was lying in the air with a yellow light flashing around his body. One had a halo on top of his head, and the last one had a light flashing between his eyebrows. He did not observe these unusual appearances with the omniscient mirror. He saw them with his own eyes. The old monk appeared beside them in a flash. He held an incense board in his hand and hit it hard. Pa, 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 pa. 4 hits landed on their heads. They immediately returned to their original state. The light dissipated and they stood straight on the ground. They continued to focus on chanting as if nothing had happened. Chapter 2586. Chu Li was shocked. Music plus literature plus novel, he knew what these signs meant. It was clearly stated in the Buddhist scriptures that they were the signs of divine powers. However, it was extremely difficult to produce divine powers in the process of cultivation. It was almost impossible. For example, in the Tempest Temple, there were more than hundreds and thousands of who cultivated profound cultivation, but there were only a handful of them who actually had supernatural powers. Only in the Vajra Temple, which was a place where only a handful of people were qualified to become a disciple, could the disciples cultivate supernatural powers. However, in this place, there were more than 100 disciples doing their evening classes, and 3 of them showed signs of divine powers. It seemed like the Great Mercy Temple had high standards and the disciples had high qualifications, just like the Titanium Temple. The sound of chanting never stopped. Then, another 6 monks showed signs of abnormality. The old monk strode in front of them and waved the incense board to send them back to normal. Chu Li sighed to himself and quickly focused on the scripture of infinite life. 2 hours had passed by the time the evening class was finished. Chu Li could understand why Ding Kong and Ding Zhen were in so much pain. For people with shallow meditation skills, chanting for 2 hours was extremely painful and tested their patience. After the evening class, Chu Li and Ding Kong left. Senior brother Ding Kong, I noticed a light shining on one of the senior brothers. Why did they get hit by the incense board? Chu Li smiled. Oh, they're going to show their divine powers. Ding Kong was unconcerned. Master said that it's not a good thing to show divine powers when one's cultivation level is insufficient. Instead, it's an obstacle and an enemy of cultivation that needs to be eliminated. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Ding Kong explained, we who cultivate the Buddhist Dharma cultivate to be free from life and death, not divine powers. If we're obsessed with divine powers, it'll be difficult for us to be free and reach nirvana. Chu Li asked, if they really have divine powers, isn't it because they're successful in their cultivation? To be free from life and death and understand the truth of heaven and earth, they'll naturally have divine powers. That's the real divine power. If they haven't understood it and can't be free from life and death, then it'll be considered a heretic. Ding Kong smiled. Buddhism and martial arts cultivation are different. Buddhism cultivates detachment. It's nothingness, the body is a bag. But martial arts cultivates existence. The body is a treasure raft. Chu Li smiled. Senior brother's Dharma is quite insightful. I heard it from Master, Ding Kong said helplessly. I can't wait to learn divine powers. Chu Li laughed. The 2 of them ate a meal together and then went their separate ways. They returned to the small courtyard to continue cultivating the marrow cleansing mantra. He first recovered his cultivation, then used the marrow cleansing art to dissolve it. His inner force turned into the strange power of the marrow cleansing art, continuously strengthening his body. His bone marrow underwent a slight change, becoming more transparent and brighter, turning from flesh to mercury. The next morning, he had another morning class. This time, he chanted the Amitabha Sutra. After 2 chants, another 6 people flashed. Their bodies floated in the air or were faintly discernible. They were about to disappear. He already knew that old monk's Buddhist name was Jiji. The old monk Jiji took a step forward and approached them. He waved the incense board a few times, and the 6 of them calmed down again. These 6 people were different from the 4 in the morning. Chuli focused on the scripture and vaguely felt a surge of energy surrounding his body. It was the golden light around him, which originated from the Buddhist statue in front of him. As the crowd chanted the scripture, the golden light shone even brighter. He did not know what this golden light was, but he knew that it was very beneficial for the cultivation of Buddhism. He had just entered a good state when he felt the golden light pass through his body. The void in his mind became clear, and the Buddhas and heavenly demons seemed to have calmed down. They stopped chanting their scriptures and were listening to the Amitabha Sutra instead. Suddenly, a crisp pop was heard above his head. It was as if a sudden clap of thunder had exploded in the void of his mind. The explosion caused his mind to go blank, and he did not know where he was. The mundane world disappeared, and everything was gone. After a while, he opened his eyes and realized that the morning class had already ended. The old monk, she closed his eyes and bowed to the crowd with pressed palms. The crowd quietly left the basilica and came to a basilica at the back. They sat at a long table with 2 big bowls in front of them. The bowls were filled with vegetarian rice and soup, and the aroma of the food filled the air. Everyone put their palms together and chanted the scripture. Then they began to eat quietly. After the meal, the monk Ding Kong pulled Chu Li's sleeve and hurried to the Skyheart courtyard. As soon as they entered the Skyheart courtyard, the monk Ding Kong's eyes widened. "Junior brother Chu, do you know that you've used a divine power?" Chu Li shook his head and smiled. "I was hit, but I really didn't know that it was a divine power. As expected of the disciple that Master's Uncle Hue Guang has chosen." The monk Ding Kong looked at him from head to toe and praised. "You've only done a few morning and evening classes, and you've already used a divine power." At that time, Chuli was so focused on chanting and sensing the golden light that he did not even use the omniscient mirror. Instead, something strange happened. The monk Ding Kong said, "I saw it clearly. Your body was flashing, disappearing, and reappearing. It was very strange." Chuli immediately understood that it was his god's limbs. He did not expect to activate his god's limbs here. Back when he cultivated God's limbs at the Titanium Temple, he could move through the void. As his cultivation level increased and he reached the Grand Master's boundary, he could move through the void even without using God's limbs. It was just that it did not require much inner energy and his speed was slightly faster. "Junior brother Chu, you should talk to Master's Uncle Hue Guang and become an inner disciple. It's such a waste to be a layman's disciple." The monk Ding Kong shook his head regretfully. As a layman's disciple, the most powerful skill is the void dragon capturing technique. However, once you become an inner disciple, you'll be cultivating the dragon elephant wisdom, crouching tiger seal, divine dragon's force, and other mystical skills. Are you really willing to just cultivate the void dragon capturing technique? Chu Li slowly shook his head. "Sai, let me tell you, the dragon elephant wisdom and the others can cultivate a divine power. No matter how strong you've cultivated the void dragon capturing technique and perfected it, you won't be able to cultivate a divine power." The monk Ding Kong said anxiously, "I've already asked around. No matter how strong you become, you won't be able to defeat an inner disciple." Chu Li sighed. The monk Ding Kong was unhappy when he saw how determined Chu Li was. He said coldly, "Why are you so stubborn? Forget it. I'm just worrying for nothing." He had been worried about Chu Li for the past 2 days. He had asked a few inner temple brothers and master's uncles about the difference between a layman's and an inner disciple's. He was very worried for Chu Li. If it was someone else, it would be fine if they did not have enough talent. However, Chuli had such good talent, yet he wasted it. He even showed signs of a divine power during the morning class today, which made him feel even more distressed. Chuli smiled. "Thank you, senior brother." Sigh. Ding Kong glared at him and shook his head. He then turned around and left. Chuli watched him leave and shook his head with a smile. He naturally understood Ding Kong's concern for him. However, he had no choice in this matter. He could not hide it from him, and he could not do it. There were things that he could not do. The Void Dragon capturing technique was already strong enough. If he could cultivate it, it would be enough for him to protect himself. Moreover, he had the protection of the Great Mercy Temple. Once his martial arts was strong enough, he could just fight for more powerful martial arts. There was no need to cross his bottom line. Chapter 2587. Dr. Petmel Public //w3c//d/dxhtml1 0 transitional / and content equals text /html charset equals gbk /meta content equals ie equals edge chrome equals 1 /metaname equals renderer content equals webkit /title good looking web novels to read for free. The entire novel to read for free /title increl equals canonical /metaname equals keywords. Content equals free novel download, full novel to read, web novel, full novel, free full novel /metaname equals description content equals the fastest update of the latest chapters of the popular web novel, the list of the best web novels, the whole site to read advertisements, the whole novel to read for free, the best web novels, all here. /metaname equals mobile agent, rel equals alternate media equals only screen in, max width, 960px. Name equals applicable device, content equals PC /meta content equals no transform /meta content equals nosetap /link rel equals style sheet, type equals text /css, ref equals /assets /css /style. CSS / head bottle /d class equals info. I have a mouthful of mysterious yellow chi that can swallow the sun, moon, and stars. Heavenly Silkworm Potatoes' latest masterpiece, a must-read fantasy novel of 2017. dd/dldldt/ded/e class equals info. In this world, there are fox immortals, river gods, water monsters, great demons, and cultivators who seek immortality. Cultivators, open your Dharma eyes and see demons and ghosts. Refine a flying sword and kill enemies from 1,000 miles away. Clairvoyance, and even more probing, /dd/dldldt/ded/d class equals info. Rise from the ashes, revive from the ashes. The sea turned to dust, the thunder and lightning dried up. The wisp of fog approached the earth once again. The shackles of the world were opened, and a new corner of the mystery of the world was revealed. /dd/dldldt/e class equals info. The legend of the Dragon King. Following the advancement of soul tool technology, the humans of the Dolua continent had conquered the oceans and discovered 2 more continents. Soul beasts had also been hunted to death by human soul masters. The king of soul beasts, who had been in hibernation for countless years, was the last of the great star dove forests. Class equals info. I only have mortal roots, immortal. I am Mo Wuji. I want to be immortal. /dd/dldldt/ded/d class equals info. A thought into the sea, a thought into mulberry fields. A single thought could slay 1,000 demons and 10,000 immortals. Only my thoughts are eternal. /dd/delh3 fantasy novel /h3 uli class equals top strong author. When ding popularity. B style equals color. Red. 128804 2 /b P slash lily forward 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 slash Lee slash all 3 urban romance slash H3 Ully class equals top strong slash strong author Yamamama auto popularity B style equals color red 5036122 slash B slash P slash lily forward 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 slash Lee slash all 3 immortal sword cultivation slash H3 Ully class equals top strong slash strong author Yun Xian popularity B style equals color red 717077 slash B slash P slash lily forward 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 slash Lee slash all 3 online gaming competition slash H3 Ully class equals top strong slash strong author Pen Dream star popularity B style equals color red 40267 slash B slash P slash lily forward 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 slash Lee slash all 3 historical novels slash H3 Ully class equals top strong slash strong author Lao by Nyo popularity B style equals color red 2505134 slash B slash P slash lily forward 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 slash Lee slash all 3 science fiction supernatural slash H3 Ully class equals top strong slash strong author Qing Luochin popularity B style equals color red 457447 slash B slash P slash lily forward 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 slash Lee slash all 3 latest update slash H3 green pepper confused 11721 27 slash Lily romance novels slash Mishio 11721 26 slash Lily romance novels slash Midding 11721 26 slash Lily Xianxia cultivation Q slash Wei Yin 11721 26 slash Lily romance novels slash Scorpion 11721 26 slash Lily City novels slash Moshi Riverside 11721 26 slash Lily City novels slash Shiching Cold Moon 11721 26 slash Lily romance novels slash Mengchenyu 11721 26 slash Lily romance novels slash Xiaoxiao Qing 11721 26 slash Lily science fiction novels slash Lulan Shusheng 11721 26 slash Lily Xianxia cultivation So Sleepy 11721 26 slash Lily romance novels slash White Dragon Show 11721 26 slash Lily online gaming novels slash Jiang DePeo 11721 26 slash Lily Xianxia cultivation Black Bean 11721 25 slash Lily Xianxia Cultivation Demons slash Geo Guai Lu 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Xianxia Cultivation Marshall Xiao MO 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Night Fears 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Smile 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Fantasy Novels slash Treasure Number 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Phone Chi Chi 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Xianxia Cultivation Fanatic Eggplant 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Historical Novels slash Uncle Ben 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Lu Xiao Yao 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Little Carp King 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Night Star Spirit 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Historical Novels slash Hidden Bamboo 1 1721. 25 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Sunset Smoke Painted Building 1 1721. 24 slash Lily Fantasy Novels slash Excellent 1 1721. 24 slash Lily Romance Novels slash Delicate Red Dust 1 1721. 24 slash Lily Online Gaming Novels slash Pumpkin Train 1 1721. 24 slash Lee slash Ul 3 Hot Novel slash H3 Ulla Small Class equals Strike Gray Old Mountain Temple slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray Golden Tiger slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray Luo Ishwe slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Ask for the Crown slash Small and Class equals S1. Fantasy slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Yao Yao Cien Air slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals the Strike Gray. Fishing for People slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Big Girl Wong slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Pin Genshin slash Small and Class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Fluorescent Violet slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Looking Back in the Snow slash Small and Class equals S1. History slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Painting Flowers slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Soul Under the Moon slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Book of Anhui Cuisine slash Small and Class equals S1. History slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Yin Yen slash Small and Class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Su Xianwan slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lee slash all 3 collection list slash H3 Ulla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Life of Dust slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Nothing slash Small and Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Old White Ox slash Small and Class equals S1. History slash M slash Lily Small Class equals Strike Gray. Chi Chinkowen slash SMA. Lem Class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Big Sun slash Small and Class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. Xiao Xiao Shinger slash Small and Class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lilla Small Class equals Strike Gray. 9 worlds first slash small class equals S1. Xuan Huan slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. G. LT slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. Old temple in the mountains slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. Tomato slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. And Xiaoning slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. Silver Xiaobao slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. Mayu slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike ray. Picking flowers slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Princess Consort Jean slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Li slash O 3. Wonderful whole book slash H3 Lillismall class equals strike gray. And Xiaoning slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. G. LT slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Chi Chinkuan slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. 9 worlds first slash small class equals S1. Xuan Huan slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Danny as Jade slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Snow Mountain Little slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Painted Flower slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Tipping Dust slash small class equals S1. Science Fiction slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Tomato slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Midnight Whisper slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Fan Elderwood slash small class equals S1. Xuan Huan slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Purple Tassel slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Tang Mo Yi slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Luo Gu slash small class equals S1. History slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Echen slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Li slash Ul 3. Latest novel slash H3 Lillismall class equals strike gray. Vows to become a mountain slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Ancestral Tree slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Shi Wang slash small class equals S1. Xuan Huan slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. 5 Square Rock slash small class equals S1. Urban slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Concubine Creek slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Tan CC slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Beijing slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Song of Sorrow slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Ling Wei Shuidia slash small class equals S1. Romance slash M slash Lillismall class equals strike gray. Dahi Chong Dong slash small class equals S1. romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray little Susu slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. Think of hometown slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray air X sign air slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. Guyen yin slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. Baby tree slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. King of weaklings slash small class equals S1 Xuan Huan slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. Yu Luo slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Lila small class equals strike gray. Rise up leaf slash small class equals S1 romance slash M slash Li slash all slash all. Chapter 2588. He fought hard every day, forcing himself not to shrink back or be afraid of difficulties. He overcame the troubles of daily chores and desperately fulfilled this promise. He felt that it was like cultivation, a tempering of himself, and a commitment to his promise. Chapter 2589. He did not think that he would have to learn another divine power, the heavenly ear. Literary novels. www. He was fully focused on chanting. When he was chanting, his body and mind were focused. The most important thing was the golden light. Without the illumination and stimulation of the golden light, it was impossible to activate the heavenly ear. His god's limbs had been cultivated painstakingly. It was the true cultivation method of divine power. However, the heavenly ear this time was different. It emerged naturally. When one's cultivation realm reached a certain level, divine power would naturally emerge. It was the same logic as when one's body grew. One would naturally have more strength than when one was young. However, in such a short period of time, his Dharma realm did not improve. Did he really have to do as Master said and give up on cultivating martial arts and focus on divine power? Divine power could be obtained forever. It was different from martial arts. It was a higher level, but the cultivation of divine power was more difficult and illusory. It was possible to cultivate a divine power in the next moment, but it was also possible that one would not be able to cultivate it for the rest of his life. He thought about it and decided to cultivate martial arts. However, if he could obtain divine power, he would not reject it. Time passed. Day after day, he cultivated the marrow cleansing technique even harder. He continuously cleansed his bone marrow, but he still could not turn it silver. The progress was slow, but it was still improving. One morning, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He cursed inwardly. This was the fluctuation from the heavenly register. Could it be that it wanted to transfer him and replace him with another soul? This was a basilica. The Buddha statue shone with golden light. Although Grandmaster Gigi's eyes were closed and his white eyebrows were lowered as he knocked on the wooden fish, he was constantly paying attention to everything. The transfer of the soul would not escape his senses. Chuli panicked, but the fluctuation of the heavenly register was getting more and more intense. It was almost uncontrollable. The golden light had been suppressing it, but now it could no longer be suppressed. Smack! The top of his head was hit by an incense stick. Instantly, his mind went blank. He did not know where or when he was. It was as if he was lost in time and space. There was no up, down, left, right, past, and future. He did not know how long this strange state lasted. When he woke up, he realized that the fluctuation in his heart had disappeared. The heavenly register was still there, but it was no longer fluctuating. He was shocked. He raised his head to look at monk Gigi. The old monk was still knocking on the wooden fish with drooping eyelids and white eyebrows. The veins on his old and withered arms were faintly visible, but he did not look weak at all. He was not like a candle in the wind, but more like a candlelight. While he was absent-minded, the morning lesson ended very quickly. He returned to his courtyard and focused his attention on the heaven inspecting token. He discovered that the heaven inspecting token had already lost its spirituality, as though the power within it had disappeared. The white jade had turned into a plain gray stone. There was not a single trace of spirituality left in it, and there was not a single trace of power left in it. Moreover, through his omniscient mirror's observation, there were no signs of it recovering. The royal registry badge had been completely destroyed. This meant that the two souls could no longer be exchanged, but they were still connected. He could clearly sense what he was doing in the heavens beyond heaven and what he was feeling. It was as if he was multitasking. Chu Li heaved a sigh of relief. Now that he had resolved his troubles, he was no longer afraid that his soul would become too strong and cause his body to collapse. However, this also meant that he could no longer rely on the imperial registry papers to strengthen his soul. He could only cultivate the spirit cultivation technique on his own. He sighed, and his emotions were complicated. Then he thought about why this had happened. It was obviously the doing of old monk Zhiji. What exactly did he know to destroy the royal registry badge with just a stick of incense? The old monk was indeed unfathomable. Since the royal registry badge had been destroyed, Chu Li calmed himself down and focused on the marrow cleansing technique. During the evening lesson, Chu Li focused his mind on chanting and kept all his distracting thoughts away. Ding Kong sat beside him and chanted. He glanced at Chu Li from time to time. These days, Chu Li's body was constantly glowing. This made Ding Kong extremely envious and curious. While he was chanting, he paid attention to Chu Li at all times. He saw Chu Li's body glowing once again. His body was like a ball of flame, shining brightly. Smack! Old monk Zhiji took a step forward and appeared in front of Chu Li. Chu Li immediately stopped moving. His low chanting stopped abruptly, as if he was a statue that had stopped moving. Ding Kong stared at him without blinking. It was as if Chu Li had really died. Chu Li was no longer breathing or moving. He was as dead as he could be. Ding Kong quickly widened his eyes and looked at old monk Zhiji. Old monk Zhiji opened his eyes and glanced at him. Ding Kong was startled. He could see the warning in old monk Zhiji's eyes, telling him not to move. Ding Kong was confused, but he did not dare to act recklessly. After the evening lesson ended, old monk Zhiji put down the wooden fish and said slowly, "Don't make any noise. Leave. Tomorrow's morning and evening lessons will be held in the side hall." "Honorable Master." "Why?" Ding Kong quickly asked. He looked at Chu Li worriedly. Chu Li did not move. He was still sitting on the cattail hassock. He was still motionless, as if he was dead. Old monk Zhiji said slowly, "Chu Li is going to cultivate in isolation. He has entered a meditative state. Don't make any noise or disturb him." "Junior brother, Chu, has entered a meditative state?" one of the monks asked in surprise. These days, although Chu Li did not socialize much with others, they would still attend morning and evening lessons together. All the monks were curious about this junior brother who had just joined the sect. They all knew about his background and knew that he was a powerful person. However, they did not expect him to be this powerful. He had only cultivated for less than a month, and he had already entered a meditative state. This was a rare opportunity for a Buddhist disciple. Once one entered a meditative state, one's understanding of the dharmic base would deepen greatly. From then on, one would be able to jump out of the original realm and step into another level. One could even see through the secrets of life and death in the world. Don't think that it's because of his talent. In fact, it's because of his accumulation. He was originally a Buddhist cultivator and has a strong foundation in the dharmic base. That's why he could enter a meditative state so quickly. Old monk Zhiji said slowly. The old monk Zhiji said slowly, "Don't be impatient, disciples. Everyone has their own fate. Once the opportunity arrives, success will follow naturally." "Yes." Everyone bowed with pressed palms. "Go." Old monk Zhiji waved his long sleeve. Everyone quietly retreated. Before they left, they looked at Chu Li. However, Chu Li was still immersed in a daze. Once again, he entered a meditative state. Ding Kong looked at him enviously and left slowly. The Grandmaster boundary, the great light surpassing state. At the same time, Chuli also entered a meditative state. He was motionless and senseless. His body was surrounded by a faint brilliance. When Sun Mingyue saw him like this, she knew that entering a meditative state was no different from isolated cultivation. She vaguely understood that he must have had an epiphany in the upper heaven. Their souls were connected, which was why he was like this. This was a great opportunity that could not be missed or disturbed. Thus, she opened the formation and gently retreated, forbidding everyone from approaching. Chuli did not know when he woke up. When he slowly woke up, he only felt that something was different. The world had become extremely quiet, as if all sound had been lost. Everything in front of him became exceptionally clear and bright. The colors were bright and moving. He was inexplicably touched and could not help but want to embrace everything. He had experienced this kind of strong impact many times. Each time, he could not resist it. It gave birth to a love for this world and a desire for life. He wanted to live longer and enjoy this world. After the world was silent, it became clearer. He did not need to divert his attention to listen. He only needed to look and see deeper. Chapter 2590. Yo! Chuli looked around. First, oh dear. The basilica was brightly lit. Old monk Ji was sitting on a cattail hassock. He was quiet and did not move. He was not even breathing. It was as if he had merged with the statue of Buddha beside him. The statue of Buddha emitted a gentle golden light. It felt warm and comfortable when it shone on his body. Back then, he could see the golden light, but it was clear. He could not see how it entered his body, and it did not have any temperature. This time, he could feel the warmth of the golden light. His surroundings were quiet. This was a world without sound. It made his heart feel exceptionally peaceful. He heard from his master that he was about to cultivate the divine ear connection. However, it seemed like the divine ear connection was different from what he imagined. It was not that he could hear everything in the world, but that he could not hear anything, just as he was thinking about it. Old monk Shiji opened his eyes and slowly stood up. He opened his mouth to speak. Chuli's heart moved slightly. Old monk Ji's voice rang in his ears. Amipa, you're awake. He could not hear anything else except for old monk Ji's voice. It was clear and full of energy. He could even hear how each word was said and the breath of each word. He never thought that a human's voice could be so sweet and touching. Master, Chuli pressed his palms together. Have I cultivated the divine power, divine ear connection? Old monk Zhiji nodded and said calmly, what you think is what you hear. Once you've cultivated the divine ear connection, your voice will no longer be obstructed by space. It's as if you're right next to your ears. Li shook his head. He could only hear old monk Ji's voice. He could not hear anything else. However, he quickly thought of Shao Qi. He heard a long exhalation, followed by a long inhalation. There was a faint whistling of air with a strange rhythm and rhythm. Li was mesmerized and immersed in it. Old monk Ji looked at him calmly. He did not disturb him. After cultivating the divine power, he needed some time to adapt. It was like suddenly changing his ears. Li was immersed in the strange rhythm of the breath when he suddenly heard a voice. Master, this cloud feeding technique is amazing. The voice was clear and cold. It was very familiar. It was Shao Qi's voice. Li was surprised that he could actually hear Shao Qi's voice. Yes, although the art of the cloud treading is wonderful, it also requires an extremely high level of talent. It is indeed rare for you to be able to grasp it so quickly. However, the art of the cloud treading is only used to refine the body. The key is still the sword technique. Your sword technique is too crude. Practice the emotionless sword technique properly. The cold voice was very similar to Shao Qi's. If it were not for the fact that he was now extremely sensitive to sound, he would have thought that it was Shao Qi who was speaking. Shao Qi's voice rang again. Yes, master. Following that, a whistling sound was heard. It was the sound of a long sword slicing through the air. Through this whistling sound, an image naturally appeared in his mind. It was the image of Shao Qi practicing her swordsmanship, and the moves of her long sword were clearly visible. He was extremely surprised. He did not expect that he could see the movements clearly through the sound. When he heard Shao Qi's calm voice, his heart also calmed down, and he completely calmed down. He pulled out the sword from the sound. Then his mind moved again. Suddenly, the surrounding sounds entered his ears clearly. The sound of chanting, the sound of the wooden fish, the sound of cooking, the crackling of firewood, the crisp chirping of birds, the sound of the breeze blowing through the treetops, the sound of leaves falling, the sound of insects crawling in the soil, and the sound of saplings breaking through the soil. All sorts of sounds were heard at the same time. However, he could clearly distinguish each sound, and their respective images appeared in his mind. If it were not for his strong soul and overbearing spirit, he would have fainted at this moment. He skillfully manipulated these sounds and experienced the images one by one. The entire world around him was clearly reflected in his mind, and he was immersed in it. It was different from experiencing it with the omniscient mirror. He moved his mind again, and the sounds suddenly disappeared, and the world returned to a quiet world. He looked at old monk Zhizhi. Old monk Zhizhi said slowly, "The divine ear connection has been completed. It'll take some time to adapt, so there is no need to rush." Chu Li felt that only his voice could be heard in the quiet world. It was incomparably clear, and he could even feel his emotions when he spoke. There was a hint of joy and relief in his calmness, as if he was happy to see his own achievements. "Thank you, honorable master." Chu Li bowed with pressed palms. Old monk Zhizhi said, "Remember not to miss tomorrow's morning class." Chu Li asked, "Honorable master, how long have I been meditating?" "A year," old monk Zhizhi replied. Chu Li's eyes widened. "A year," old monk Zhizhi said slowly. "Divine power is not that easy to achieve. You must meditate for a year, and during this period, you will not have any thoughts or feelings." "A year," Chu Li sighed. A year here was equivalent to a month in the heaven beyond heaven. Fortunately, it was still all right. He let out a sigh of relief. If it was 10 years, it would be troublesome. "Go!" Old monk Zhi waved his hand. Chu Li bowed with pressed palms and left the basilica. When he returned to Skyheart Courtyard, he saw Monk Ding Kong sweeping the courtyard. When he saw Chu Li pushing the door open, he immediately tossed the broom aside and strode towards Chu Li, sizing him up. Chu Li smiled. "Senior brother, you have worked hard. Good lad. You've meditated for a year." Monk Ding Kong patted his shoulder and laughed. Senior brothers are all convinced. The longer one meditated, the deeper one's meditation skill was, and the purer one's heart was. There was nothing much to say about this, only admiration. One could not slack off in meditation. One could only work hard bit by bit. Chu Li smiled. "I grew up in the temple, so I've been cultivating meditation since I was young." "No wonder." Monk Ding Kong nodded. "How is it? Have you achieved the divine ear connection?" "Yes." Chu Li nodded. "Then let's listen and see what junior brother Ding Zhun is doing." Monk Ding Kong smiled. Chu Li could not help but laugh. "Divine power cannot be used lightly. Senior brother Ding Kong, you should know this. It's not considered as using lightly, but there's no harm in trying." Monk Ding Kong grinned. "I was just about to look for him to see if he's cultivating." Chu Li shook his head and focused his ears to listen. Monk Ding Kong quickly stood still and stared at Chu Li, afraid that he would disturb him by making a sound. After a while, Chu Li said, "Senior brother Ding Zhun isn't in the temple. He's gone down the mountain." "That can't be. I saw him yesterday. He didn't say that he was going down the mountain." Monk Ding Kong was skeptical. Chu Li smiled. "I can't be wrong. He's buying something in town." He really did not want to steal, as it was a taboo for others, so he sighed. "Senior brother, if I use my divine power like this, I'm afraid that honorable master will cripple my divine power." All right, just this once." Monk Ding Kong quickly smiled. Chu Li said, "Senior brother, why don't you go and take a look?" "Let's go." Monk Ding Kong quickly said. He could not wait to test if the divine ear connection was as magical as it seemed. So he pulled Chu Li out of Sky Heart Courtyard and arrived at the inner temple. After knocking on the door, a novice monk ran out and called out with a grin. Junior brother Ding Kong, junior brother Ding Jun, isn't here. Has he gone down the mountain into town? Ding Kong quickly asked. Yes, he just left this morning. He'll be back tonight. The novice monk nodded. Monk Ding Kong looked at Chu Li and chuckled. Chapter 2591. Ding Kong said, "This is senior brother Ding Ming. He serves Masters Junior Huiguang. He's not an outsider to you, junior brother Chu." Chu Li smiled and pressed his palms together. Senior brother Ding Ming. Ding Ming waved his hand. He was handsome and tall, compared to Ding Kong, who was short and fat, and Ding Jun, who was thin. He could be said to be a handsome man. It was just that he was bald and had a sharp chin, which made him look somewhat comical. He had a calm temperament and did not look funny at all. He said seriously, "I heard that you're cultivating divine power, junior brother Chu?" Chu Li nodded. "I've just woken up from meditation. Although I've been under master for a long time, I haven't been accepted as a disciple. I don't deserve the title of senior brother." Ding Ming waved his hand and sighed. "It seems like master really has a good eye for people. He could see through your profound dermic base and extraordinary comprehension." Chu Li smiled. "Senior brother, you flatter me. It must have been a year." Young Buddhist monk Ding Ming sighed. "You're indeed a genius in dermic base, but don't cultivate dermic base and forget about martial arts." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Ding Ming said, "Divine power seems to be powerful, but it's the most unreliable. Don't think that you've mastered divine power so quickly. You might not be able to do it again in hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. It's not as reliable as martial arts. You have to take it one step at a time." Chu Li was deep in thought. Ding Ming said, "Cultivating martial arts to the extreme is no different from divine power. Different paths lead to the same goal. One is a shortcut while the other is a bitter path. However, it's wider and flatter, unlike the shortcut." Chu Li said, "Thank you, senior brother Ding Ming." Monk Ding Kong said, "Senior brother Ding Ming, I don't think that's right. Without an outstanding cultivation base in the Dharma of Buddhism, without a superhuman perception, it was impossible to achieve supernatural powers. Both were indispensable. The disciples of the Great Mercy Temple were people with outstanding perception and natural endowments. However, there was no shortcut in cultivating the Dharma of Buddhism. It needed to be cultivated step by step. In this case, cultivating martial arts and divine power were the same. However, martial arts also required a profound dermic base. Similarly, both required a profound dermic base and a bitter cultivation. Therefore, divine power was not a shortcut. This was a competition between the outer temple and the inner temple." Ding Ming snorted. "Why, junior brother Ding Kong, you've changed your mind and want to cultivate divine arts?" Monk Ding Kong said, "Since junior martial brother Chu has such extraordinary comprehension and profound Dharma cultivation base, why do you need to practice martial arts? Why don't you just cultivate divine arts?" In the past, he felt that practicing martial arts was good and awe-inspiring, but practicing supernatural powers was out of his reach. There were 280 monks in the outer temple, but only a few of them were able to practice supernatural powers. His aptitude was far from these seniors, so there was no hope for him to practice supernatural powers. The power of divine powers far surpassed martial arts, but the cultivation of divine powers was far more difficult than martial arts. When he saw how easily Chu Li managed to cultivate divine powers, he immediately changed his mind. He felt that it was better for Chu Li to cultivate divine powers rather than martial arts. Divine powers are illusory and unfathomable. Ding Ming said with a straight face, "If I can cultivate the divine power this time, it won't be difficult the next time. It's better to practice martial arts. Moreover, under Master's guidance, I'll definitely be able to master the best martial arts." "Martial arts are inferior to divine abilities," Ding Kong said. Ding Ming snorted. "Who says martial arts are inferior to divine arts? Once you've cultivated the dragon elephant prajna technique, you'll have infinite wisdom, infinite strength, and lightning speed. No one in the world can stop you." Ding Kong shook his head and said nothing. Although the dragon elephant prajna technique was powerful, it was not as powerful as the limb of God and the divine ear technique. It was impossible to defend against, and no one could hurt you. There was also the energy technique, which had infinite strength and was far beyond what martial arts could achieve. Chu smiled. Senior brother Ding Ming, don't worry. I'm a martial arts practitioner. Why don't you practice martial arts and divine powers at the same time? Ding Kong smiled. You'll be able to cultivate divine powers by doing morning and evening classes anyway. You'll have to do morning and evening classes after you've cultivated martial arts. Ding Ming said, I haven't officially started yet. I'll have to do morning and evening classes just to cultivate the foundation, but I won't have to after I've started. Ding Kong glared at him and scoffed. Senior brother Ding Ming, listen to Masters Junior Hui Guang. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Ding Ming looked at Chu Li deeply. Don't forget that you're an inner temple disciple. He turned and left after he finished speaking. Ding Kong pouted and scoffed. You're such a busybody. Chu Li said, Senior brother, forget it. Anyway, don't listen to him. He's just a novice monk, not Masters Junior Hui Guang or Honorable Master Ji. He's not as knowledgeable as them. Ding Kong quickly said. He was afraid that Chu Li would change his mind and focus on cultivating martial arts. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he said in a low voice, Senior brother, I want to go into isolated cultivation for a while more to comprehend divine powers. All right. Ding Kong quickly said, I'll stand guard for you. Go back quickly. Chu Li woke up and used the omniscient mirror to observe the entire great light surpassing realm. He saw that the entire great light surpassing realm was shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere. The disciples were dispirited, and many of them were severely injured. They were either missing an arm or a leg. Fortunately, they had spirit pills with them that saved their lives. Sun Mingyue was sitting in the light pool with the 4 great protectors surrounding her. No one else dared to approach her. Sun Mingyue's right arm had disappeared, and only her left arm was hanging in front of her like a one-armed jade statue. The force on her body was surging, and her jade-like face was as red as a painted pill. She was extremely beautiful, and a strange force was wreaking havoc in her body, destroying her internal organs while she was healing them. She had cultivated the great light scripture to its ultimate state and had an endless cycle. She also had many strange skills. When she saw that she could no longer suppress it, the inner energy of the great light scripture turned into the cloud, slashing power, and fought against the strange force. They were in a stalemate, and her body kept deteriorating. Chu Li appeared behind her in the next moment and sat down with his legs crossed. His right palm was already pressed against her back. His 2 souls were connected, and the void of his mind was constantly chanting the palm leaf scripture. Therefore, the inner energy in this body was becoming purer and purer. It was like silver or mercury, heavy and firm, but smooth. Once his inner energy entered Sun Mingyue's body, it was like a mountain pressing down on her. It immediately devoured the strange force and circulated in her body. Then, he slowly retracted his palm and opened his eyes to look at the 4 women. The 4 women were dressed in different colors and had different appearances, but they were all beautiful. They fist saluted. Chu Li waved his hand, and a girl in purple came forward. Chu Li pulled her sleeve and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared outside the light pool to avoid disturbing Sun Mingyue's recovery. The girl in purple, Ji Mingfei, looked at him nervously and lowered her head. Chu Li asked, Mingfei, what happened? The 4 women were all powerful martial arts that he had created. He did not treat them as outsiders, and they were absolutely loyal to Sun Mingyue. Big Brother Chu, when you were in isolated cultivation, for black-clothed masters broke into our territory. Their martial arts were extremely strange, and their swordsmanship was extraordinary. They were as fast as lightning and impossible to defend against. They joined forces and injured the Boundary Master. Ji Mingfei frowned slightly and pursed her red lips. Chu Li paced with his hands behind his back and pondered. In today's world, the depth of Sun Mingyue's cultivation level was already one of the best. Even if the Taihao Peak's peak leader came personally and used the enlightened master's descent, he would not be able to defeat her. However, she was injured by 4 black-clothed masters. Moreover, he felt a sense of familiarity with the force in Sun Mingyue's body. It had the shadow of the heavenly demonic power. It was the heavenly demon. Ji Mingfei bit her red lips until they bled. She slowly said, "After they injured the boundary master, they wanted to destroy our entire territory. Fortunately, everyone worked together to defeat them. Coincidentally, the 4 of us were in isolated cultivation. It's all our fault. If we weren't in isolation, this wouldn't have happened." Chapter 2593. Counting carefully, I've been writing books for 10 years. How many decades do you have in your life? The best years of my youth were spent in obscurity while writing. Writing was my source of joy. It was the lifestyle I had chosen. Even if I barely had enough to eat and wear, I persevered. Persevered. Even if the results weren't good, I persevered. The world of online literature was like a computer, changing rapidly. I had been working hard to keep up with the interests of the readers. Hard work and happiness coexisted. Every book was a new beginning. It was a new journey. It was a journey of life that I shared with the readers. The birth of every new book had too many people to thank. The growth of every book was not the result of one person's hard work. It was the result of everyone's support. Without the platform of Yuan Group, there would be no chance to make a living from writing. Without the attention and support of the chief editor, Zink, and the editor, Shuamo, there would be no growth of this book. Without the subscription and support of the readers, I might be living a difficult life, carrying heavy pressure. Without the strong support of the hardcore fans and the gentle bandits, I might gradually fade away and not be able to persevere. The chance to be recommended meant that this book was recognized. I only felt gratitude to everyone. Chapter 2594. The Top 10. That's the private domain of the top gurus. It's not a place for a low-level writer like me to step foot in. No matter how hard I try, it's useless to write 10,000 words a day. Even if the gurus don't write, their monthly votes will still increase more than mine. That's the reality. But there was a trace of dissatisfaction. This month's monthly votes were the best I had ever gotten in my 10 years of writing. 13th place, the closest I had ever been to the top 10. I wondered if I could get closer. Even if I couldn't get into the top 10, getting closer was still exciting. Chapter 2597. The girl groaned and frowned, but did not say a word. She did not scream, but cold sweat formed on her forehead. She looked at Sun Mingyue with bright eyes and shook her head slowly, indicating that Sun Mingyue did not need to save her anymore. Sun Mingyue narrowed her eyes and suddenly smiled. "Good technique, I'm impressed." She clapped her hands lightly, as if she did not care about her disciple being tortured. She looked at Fu Yuanheng in admiration. "So this is the technique of the Thunder Pool. I've learned a lot. I thought that since Song Wuji is so powerful, his subordinates must be powerful too. I didn't expect." She shook her head and sighed. "I've learned a lot," Fu Yuanheng said coldly. "Aren't you going to ask them to stop? Then we won't stop either." Sun Mingyue said, "Forget it." Her eyes suddenly focused and brightened as she looked at the middle-aged man who broke the girl's arm. Bang! The middle-aged man suddenly trembled, and then he fell limply to the ground, no longer breathing. He was already dead. "You!" Fu Yuanheng's expression changed, and he shouted, "How dare you!" He did not expect Sun Mingyue to have such a strange skill that could kill people with her gaze. It was impossible to guard against. Who knew if she could channel when she glanced at him? Even if she could block it, he would still be on tenterhooks. Sun Mingyue took out 2 jade talismans and threw them into the air. They were thrown in the direction of the mountain, where everyone was fighting. Bang! After a muffled sound, the jade talismans released 2 balls of light that gathered together and turned into a larger ball of light that spread and instantly enveloped the surrounding mountains. Skylocking formation. Fu Yuanheng frowned and scoffed. "What are you trying to do?" Are you going to kill all of us? Sun Mingwe nodded calmly. 8 disciples in exchange for 18 of your lives. It's worth it. As she spoke, she looked at one of the middle-aged men who was about to attack. The middle-aged man felt Sun Mingwe's eyes suddenly light up. Then, he felt a sharp pain in his head as darkness engulfed him. Although Sun Mingwe did not have Chu Li's spiritual power, she had consumed the magical fruit and had been cultivating the spirit cultivation technique. Therefore, her spiritual power was far stronger than theirs. Even without thunder, the power of the god's slaying sword was strong enough. Although 2 middle-aged men had died, the 2 great lights surpassing realm disciples did not move. Their acupoints had been sealed, and they could not move at all. One of their arms was still dangling, and the white stubble was frightening. Fu Yuanheng gritted his teeth and said coldly, Sun Mingwe, do you really think we don't dare to kill? If you ask them to stop, we can release these great radiance-surpassing realm disciples. Sun Mingwe said indifferently, Impossible. She glanced at the 8 women and sighed. Our great light, surpassing territory has let you down. I'll let you down too. The 8 women pursed their red lips and revealed a faint smile on their pale faces. They were ready to meet their deaths. Fu Yuanheng couldn't help but panic when he saw this, and he shouted, Sun Mingwe, do you really want them to die in vain? Sun Mingwe said, Kill them if you have the guts. Good. Fu Yuanheng shouted, Sun Qichong. Xushan. The 2 middle-aged men immediately slapped the back of the woman in front of them. Bang, bang. After 2 muffled sounds, the 2 women bled from their 7 apertures. They were dead and collapsed weakly. Sun Mingwe's eyes flashed. A middle-aged man collapsed weakly without making a sound. Sun Mingwe's bright eyes looked at the other middle-aged man who had attacked. The middle-aged man, Xu Shan, hurriedly moved to the side, trying to avoid this gaze. As soon as he moved, his body stiffened, and he collapsed weakly, dead. Sun Mingwe turned to look at Fu Yuanheng and said indifferently, Come on. After saying that, she looked at the middle-aged man beside her. The middle-aged man let out a strange cry and shrank behind the woman in front of him. However, he still couldn't avoid it and collapsed weakly. In the blink of an eye, only 3 middle-aged men were left standing. Their expressions changed drastically, filled with anger and a faint trace of fear. They weren't afraid of death, but to die silently and defenseless like this made them feel extremely aggrieved. It was as if they were ants being crushed to death and weren't worth the opponent's attention. They were unwilling to accept this outcome after cultivating so hard for so long. There was also a trace of fear. When their lives were in the hands of others, this feeling of powerlessness was inexplicably terrifying. Sun Mingwe turned to look at Fu Yuanheng. Either you let them go now, or we die together. Fu Yuanheng gritted his teeth, and his thin face became ferocious. He shouted hoarsely, Fine, fine, kill them all, kill them all. He widened his eyes and roared as if he wanted to devour someone. Bang! In the distance, another old man flew up and spurted blood. The blood was accompanied by minced flesh. His internal organs were already shattered, and his life was in danger. Fu Yuanheng glared at Sun Mingwe. They originally had spiritual medicine, and as long as they didn't die, they could be saved even if their internal organs were shattered. However, in this place, if Sun Mingwe didn't yield, she wouldn't allow anyone to save their lives. Sun Mingwe's bright eyes swept across the distance and suddenly lit up. Bang! Another old man flew up and spurted out blood before landing heavily on the ground. What are you waiting for? Kill them all. Fu Yuanheng shouted hoarsely. He was furious, and there was only one thought in his mind, which was to tear Sun Mingwe into pieces and cut her into pieces so that she would never be able to reincarnate. However, Sun Mingwe's aura was too strong, and he couldn't win. He could only use this method to force her. This method, which worked every time, was ineffective here. Sun Mingwe was so cold-blooded that she didn't compromise even when faced with the threat of her disciples' lives. This caused his plan to fail, and he could only fight them head-on. This The three middle-aged men's expressions changed slightly, and then they gritted their teeth. Sun Mingyue sneered at one of the middle-aged men. The middle-aged man had just raised his hand, and then he collapsed weakly. The remaining two middle-aged men had already made their move. Bang, bang. Blood flowed from the 7 apertures of the two women, and they collapsed weakly dead. However, they also collapsed weakly and were killed by Sun Mingyue. Sun Mingyue fluttered over to the 4 women who were still alive. She gently flicked her sleeve and unsealed their acupoints. Stand aside. Yes, Realm Master. The 4 women bowed their heads and cupped their fists, then retreated to the side. Sun Mingyue ignored their expressions and turned to look at Fu Yuanheng. A faint sneer hung at the corner of her mouth. What else do you have to rely on now? Sun Mingyue, if you kill us, Pool Master will definitely take revenge. Fu Yuanheng hissed. His eyes were bloodshot. 8 of his trusted subordinates had died. Although he had also killed 4 great light surpassing state disciples, it was obvious from Sun Mingyue's appearance that these 8 women weren't important figures. Moreover, their martial arts were weak, and they couldn't compare to his 8 trusted subordinates. Sun Mingyue chuckled. So what if he takes revenge? I'll kill you first. Do you really think you can keep us here? Fu Yuanheng sneered and hissed. At this point, why are you still holding back? Hurry up. Bang, 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 bang. Lightning suddenly fell from the sky and struck the 6 elders. Chapter 2598. Sun Mingyue shook her head. That's all there is to it. She knew that this was the Thunderpool's secret technique, Thunderbolt Descent. It was similar to Deity Descent, but the power of Thunderbolt Descent was much weaker. It was a secret technique that would cause both sides to suffer. Their bodies contained lightning, which greatly increased their speed. At the same time, this lightning was extremely harmful to their bodies. If the other party could withstand the lightning descent mystic technique, there was no need for them to attack. The one who used the mystic technique would die first. The 4 young girls suddenly turned into 4 wisps of smoke, shuttling back and forth between the 6 old men's ghostly movements and palm techniques as if they didn't have a physical body. In the blink of an eye, a quarter of an hour had already passed, and the corpses on the ground were about to turn cold. Fu Yuanheng grew angrier as he watched the situation unfold. However, his heart felt cold. He knew that he had miscalculated this time. He hadn't expected Sun Mingyue to be so unyielding, and he hadn't expected a great light surpassing expert to be so powerful. Sun Mingyue said calmly, "Do you really think that the lightning pool is invincible? You're just relying on Song Wuji's reputation, so we won't lower ourselves to your level. Ignorant and shameless, you really deserve to die. If you kill us, Pool Master will definitely take revenge." Fu Yuanheng gritted his teeth and snorted. He no longer had the demeanor of an expert. Even his loose robe could not hide his malevolence and viciousness. He glared at Sun Mingyue. "We're the same. You're just relying on Chu Li's reputation." "That's right. So it doesn't matter if I kill you guys. Chu Li will take care of it anyway." Sun Mingyue nodded lightly and smiled sweetly. "If Song Wuji wants to kill me, he'll have to ask Chu Li for permission first. Do you really think that Chu Li can defeat Pool Leader?" Fu Yuanheng laughed out loud and shook his head. "What a joke," Sun Mingyue said faintly. "Chu Li's cultivation level is far higher than mine. Defeating Song Wuji will be a piece of cake. As soon as Song Wuji comes out of isolated cultivation, that will be the moment of his defeat." "Ha!" Fu Yuanheng just laughed. Sun Mingyue wanted to cut open his head and know what he was thinking. She wanted to know what kind of trump card Song Wuji had and what kind of mystical technique he had cultivated. However, on the surface, she did not seem to care and said, "No matter how strong Song Wuji's spirit-devouring art is, it's useless. Can he block this?" As she spoke, her eyes lit up. Just as Fu Yuanheng was about to dodge, he was sent flying with a bang and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. His cultivation was profound, and he had treasures in his possession to guard against Sun Mingyue's sneak attack. Although the 10 of them had treasures that could calm their minds, it was a pity that their defense against the Deity Slayer sword was not as good as they had hoped. Firstly, It was because Sun Mingyue was enraged at the death of her 4 disciples. Her killing intent condensed, and her power increased greatly. Secondly, it was because she had directly obtained the deity Slayer sword that was highly refined. Naturally, the more proficient the fire, the greater the power. Sun Mingyue snorted. If you don't say it, I'll give you another one. Fu Yuanheng said, there's no harm in telling you. Our pool master has mastered the spirit-devouring art. If he doesn't devour spirits, no one can defeat him. Nonsense. Sun Mingyue curled her lips and said, if he really mastered it, wouldn't he have ascended long ago? As far as she knew, the level of this spirit-swallowing technique had already reached the next level of heaven martial arts. If she really mastered it, she would be able to ascend directly. Although I haven't ascended, I'm not far from it. Fu Yuanheng said proudly. Once we kill Chu Li, the pool master will be able to ascend. When that time comes, without Chu Li's protection, your great light surpassing state will definitely die. Other than the Thunder Pool, the other 8 divisions will not let you go. Then you could die first. Sun Mingyue snorted coldly. Fu Yuanheng suddenly disappeared. Sun Mingyue frowned, but did not pursue him. She glanced at the remaining elders and scoffed. She used the deity Slayer sword. Even if they used the descent of thunder, they would be killed quickly. The 4 young girls floated to Sun Mingyue's side. They did not give up and checked the 4 girls on the ground. Indeed, they had lost their lives. Their vitality had been cut off, and they were dead. Boundary Master. They took off their veils, revealing a sorrowful expression on their beautiful faces. Although they knew that the Boundary Master had made the right choice, it was still hard for them to watch their fellow disciples being killed without any resistance. For a moment, they did not feel the excitement of killing all 9 Thunderpool Masters. Sun Mingyue smiled. Don't worry, they won't die. The girls looked at her in surprise. This was especially true for the 4 girls who had escaped death. Their broken bones had been reconnected, and they were recovering quickly with the help of the spirit medicine. Sun Mingyue said, as long as Chu Li returns, they will be able to live. Put their bodies in the ice coffins first. There's no need for that. Chu Li's voice suddenly rang. He appeared beside Sun Mingyue with a human head in his hand. It was Fu Yuanheng's. He tossed Fu Yuanheng's head aside and looked at the 4 girls on the ground. He smiled. It will be done soon. He formed a strange hand seal and pressed it between the 4 girls' eyebrows. He sent their souls back and at the same time sent them a vitality and lifespan. In the blink of an eye, the 4 girls started to breathe again. Their pale and green faces quickly faded and were replaced with red. They slowly woke up in front of the crowd and looked around blankly. They really came back to life. The crowd exclaimed in surprise. Then, they shouted in joy and went forward to help them up. Chu Li and Sun Mingyue looked at each other and smiled. No wonder the Boundary Master is so tough. He has such a secret skill. The girl in red exclaimed. The girl in green smiled. I've heard that there's a powerful formation in our boundary. Even if someone dies in the boundary, they could be resurrected. I thought it was just a rumor. I didn't expect it to be true. Chu Li and Sun Mingyue appeared in his courtyard. Sun Mingyue looked at him and nodded in satisfaction. She had been worried that Chu Li's body could not withstand the backfire of the heavenly inspecting token. Every time he returned, the strengthened soul energy was the harm of the heavenly inspecting token. It was a great benefit to others, but no one's body could withstand it every time. Looks like your plan is going well. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. The people from the Thunder Pool jumped out first. However, I'm afraid they'll wait and see for a while after this massacre. He guessed that the people from the 9 divisions would not sit still. The strength of the 4 girls proved the benefits of the great light surpassing boundary. No one could resist it. However, the annihilation of the 10 Thunderpool Masters would still make the others afraid. They would wait and see, waiting for someone to jump out. When that happened, they might all attack together and destroy the great light surpassing boundary with the force of a huge avalanche. I'm a greedy and shameless guy. Sun Mingyue said hatefully. Chu Li said, this is very normal. Are there still disciples from the great light surpassing boundary outside? No, only these 8. Sun Mingyue shook her head and frowned. Song Wuji's spirit-devouring technique is almost perfected. I'm afraid he's going to ascend. She knew that Chu Li and Song Wuji had an unresolvable hatred. If Song Wuji really ascended, it would be a great failure for Chu Li. It would be even more difficult to deal with Song Wuji on the upper heaven. It was uncertain who would be the one to deal with. Chu Li said, "It's not that easy to perfect it." He was secretly anxious. It was time to deal with Song Wuji. However, his current strength was not the strongest. The soul-splitting technique had divided half of his soul energy, so his strength was now weakened. This was the magic and also the disadvantage of the soul-splitting technique. The only way was to cultivate the two halves of the soul to their original levels. Thus, he said, "I'm going back now. Be careful. Don't worry." Sun Mingwei waved her hand. Chapter 2599. Monk Hui Guang continued, "Are you going to the inner temple with me, or will you stay here for now?" Chu Li quickly replied, "I'll enter the inner temple after I'm done cultivating the marrow cleansing technique." There was no benefit in entering the inner temple if he only cultivated the marrow cleansing technique. It was quiet here, and no one would disturb him. It was the most suitable place to cultivate. He did not want to change places for now. Monk Huiguang nodded. "That's good too. Although the marrow cleansing technique is simple, it's very important, especially for someone like you who joined the temple halfway. It's the most important thing. You can't neglect it just because it's simple." Chu Li replied, "I understand. Ordinary people would not understand the mysteries of the marrow cleansing technique. However, his omniscient mirror could clearly see the effects of the marrow cleansing technique. It truly had the wonders of changing one's marrow. Others would not be able to see it so clearly. They might think that the marrow cleansing technique only turned inner energy into a warm energy that would eventually disappear. It would be difficult for them to understand its key function." Monk Huiguang smiled when he saw his serious expression. This was the advantage of having an upper root vessel. They would not miss out on seemingly ordinary but important things. They would take it seriously. He fluttered out of Sky Heart Courtyard. Monk Ding Kong quickly ran over. His chubby body was exceptionally agile. He approached Chu Li and asked, "How is it? How is it?" Chu Li smiled and nodded. "From today onwards, I'm an inner disciple." Monk Ding Kong patted Chu Li's shoulder. "That's right. However, you can't shave yet. It'll take at least a year. This is the temple's rule." Chu Li replied, "There's no rush. Haha, this is a cause for celebration. All right, what about your wife?" Ding Kong's laughter stopped abruptly. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. "She's going into the small cave to cultivate in isolation." The small cave. Ding Kong showed a sympathetic expression. The small cave. It'll take at least 100 years for her to come out. You're disheartened, aren't you? Chu Li shook his head. Ding Kong patted his shoulder and comforted him. It's okay. You can cut your ties with the mortal world and cultivate diligently. When you become a top-notch master, you won't have to worry about not being able to find a woman. Chu Li replied, "Looks like Senior Ding Kong wants women too." Sigh. Ding Kong looked worried. "I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I should have tasted the pleasures of the mortal world before becoming a monk." Chu Li smiled. It was best to cultivate after seeing through the world of mortals. If one could not see through it, it would indeed be difficult to progress with worries in the heart. However, if one did not experience it, they would not know what it was like. With a pure heart, one could also progress. Ding Kong said, "All right then, I won't disturb you anymore. Cultivate well." He waved his hand and left the Skyheart Courtyard. Chu Li continued to sit cross-legged and cultivate. Cultivating the marrow cleansing technique was like drinking fine wine. It was wonderful beyond words. The next morning class, he chanted sutras, his body glowing brightly. His mind went blank. Unknowingly, the morning class had already ended. He spent the rest of his time cultivating the marrow cleansing art. Initially, he thought that he would be able to change his bone marrow to silver very quickly. However, he realized that it wasn't as easy as he thought. The change was slow, and according to his estimation, There was no hope of completing it within a year. He tried to chant the palm leaf scripture while cultivating the marrow cleansing art. He didn't expect the effect to be so miraculous, instantly increasing the efficiency of the marrow cleansing art by several times. Originally, it would take a year, but now it only took a month. His spirits were lifted, and he cultivated even harder. Other than the morning and evening classes, he spent the rest of his time cultivating. During the morning class, while he was chanting, his head was hit by the incense board again. His mind went blank, but after a while, he recovered and felt the warmth of the golden light. His head was hit by the incense board again. After his mind went blank, he regained consciousness after a while. Then there was another crisp sound, and the incense board fell again. Chuli opened his eyes in confusion and looked at the old monk, Zhizhi. After hitting his incense board, Monk Zhizhi took a step back to the side of the wooden fish, and the sound of the wooden fish continued. Soon, the morning class ended. Chuli followed Ding Kong out of the basilica in confusion. He cultivated the marrow cleansing art while eating. After eating, he walked to the Skyheart courtyard, and Ding Kong followed him to the Skyheart courtyard. Chuli turned his head and looked at him in surprise. Ding Kong quickly said, "Junior brother Chu, we go to use your divine power again." Chuli was stunned. Monk Ding Kong looked at him from head to toe a few times and sighed. "You're really infuriating. Your aptitude is too good. Not only are you a genius in martial arts, you're also very good in dharma cultivation." Chuli asked, "What happened just now?" He was fully focused on the Buddhist scripture. That was the only way he could absorb the golden light. The omniscient mirror was useless, so he did not know what happened and why he was hit by the incense board so many times. "Your body is constantly glowing," Ding Kong said. "Honorable Master Zhizhi restrained himself for a while after hitting you. He started glowing again, so he hit you a few times." Chuli nodded slowly. Ding Kong said, "This is the sign of divine power for me. Honorable Master Zhi only suppresses divine power, but he doesn't eliminate it. You look like you're about to form a divine power." Chuli smiled. He had already cultivated God's limbs, so it was reasonable to say that it was forming a divine power. Ding Kong sighed. "In my opinion, with your aptitude, you should stop cultivating martial arts." Just as Chuli was about to speak, footsteps were heard again. He turned his head and saw Monk Hui Guang slowly walking over with his monk's robe fluttering. "Master." Chuli bowed with pressed palms. Monk Hui Guang bowed back. Ding Kong bowed. "Master Junior Hui Guang, I'll take my leave." "Go." Monk Hui Guang nodded. Ding Kong winked at Chu Li and left the Sky Heart courtyard in a timid manner. Chu Li invited Monk Hui Guang to sit at the stone table. Monk Hui Guang took the teacup and took a sip. He put it down slowly and said gently, "Master Junior Zhi found me. Is it about divine power?" Chu Li asked. Monk Hui Guang nodded. Chu Li said, "Master, I cultivated God's limbs when I was in the lower realm." "God's limbs?" Monk Hui Guang smiled. "This time, it's not God's limbs that you want." Chu Li was surprised. He thought his God's limbs had manifested. Monk Hui Guang said, "According to Masters Junior Zhi, you should be manifesting heaven's ear." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He was surprised. Monk Hui Guang smiled. Masters Junior Zhi also said that with your aptitude, it's a waste to cultivate martial arts in the inner temple. It's better to stay in the outer temple and cultivate the dermic base. The divine power will far surpass martial arts. Chu Li quickly shook his head. Monk Hui Guang said, "I won't force you. You can choose whether to cultivate the dermic base or martial arts." Chu Li quickly said, "I still want to cultivate martial arts." "You're here for martial arts, but the power of divine power is not something that martial arts can compare to." Monk Hui Guang sighed. "Heaven's ear is fine, but God's limbs is better than any light body technique. Energy is better than any inner force heart technique." Chu Li asked, "Energy?" Monk Hui Guang said, "After energy, you'll have endless power and vigor. No one will be able to defeat you. There are divine powers in the outer temple." Chu Li remained silent. Monk Hui Guang smiled. Before you finish cultivating the marrow cleansing technique, you can think about it. Chapter 2600. He didn't expect that he would have to create another sacred art, the heavenly ear. Novels, music, literature, novel, www. He focused all his attention on chanting the sutras. When he was chanting, his body and mind were focused. The most important thing was still the golden light. Without the illumination and stimulation of the golden light, it was impossible to activate the heavenly ear connection. His god's limbs was something that he had cultivated painstakingly. It was a true mystique cultivation method. However, this time around, his heaven's ear was different. It was something that came naturally. When one's cultivation realm reached a certain level, supernatural powers would naturally emerge. It was the same logic as when one's body grew. One's strength would naturally increase compared to when one was young. However, in such a short period of time, his Dharma realm did not increase. Do I really have to do as Master said and give up on practicing martial arts and focus on divine powers? Divine powers could be obtained forever, but they were different from martial arts. They were of a higher level, but the cultivation of divine powers was more difficult. It was more illusory. It was possible to master a divine power in the next moment, but it was also possible that one would never be able to master a divine power for the rest of his life. He thought about it and decided to practice martial arts. However, if he could get the divine ability, he would not reject it. Time passed day by day. He cultivated the marrow cleansing incantation more and more diligently, continuously cleansing his marrow, but he still couldn't make it turn silver. His progress was slow, but he was still improving. One morning, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He cursed inwardly. This was the fluctuation emitted by the heaven inspecting token. Could it be that it wanted to transfer him and replace him with another soul? This was the main hall. The Buddha statue flickered with golden light. Although Grandmaster Gigi's eyes were slightly closed and his white eyebrows drooped down as he knocked on the wooden fish, he was paying close attention to everything around him. The transfer of souls couldn't escape his senses. Chuli panicked, but the fluctuation of the imperial register was getting more and more intense. It was almost impossible to suppress it. The golden light had been suppressing it, but now it could no longer suppress it. Pah! He was hit on the top of his head. Suddenly, his mind went blank. He didn't know where he was or when he was. It was as if he was lost in time and space. There was no up, no down, no left, no right, no past, no future. This strange state lasted for an unknown period of time. When he woke up, he realized that the fluctuation in his heart had already disappeared. The inspecting heaven token was still there, but it was no longer fluctuating. He was shocked. He raised his head to look at monk Ji. The old monk was still knocking on the wooden fish with drooping eyelids and white eyebrows. The veins on his old and withered arms were faintly visible, but he did not look weak at all. He was not like a candle in the wind, but more like a candle burning brightly. While he was absent-minded, the morning lesson ended very quickly. He returned to his courtyard and focused his attention on the heaven inspecting token. He discovered that the heaven inspecting token had already lost its spirituality, as though the power within it had disappeared. The white jade had turned into a plain gray stone. There was not a single trace of spirituality left in it, and there was not a single trace of power left in it. Moreover, through his omniscient mirror's observation, there were no signs of it recovering. The royal registry badge had been completely destroyed. This meant that the two souls could no longer be exchanged, but they were still connected. He could clearly sense what he was doing and what he was feeling in the heavens beyond heaven. It was as if he was multitasking. Chuli heaved a sigh of relief. Now that he had resolved his troubles, he was no longer afraid that his soul would become too strong and cause his body to collapse. However, this also meant that he could no longer rely on the imperial registry papers to strengthen his soul. He could only cultivate the spirit cultivation technique on his own. He sighed, and his emotions were complicated. Then he thought about why this had happened. It was obviously the doing of old monk Ji. What exactly did he know that he could destroy the royal registry badge with just a stick of incense? The old monk was indeed unfathomable. Since the royal registry badge had been destroyed, Chuli calmed himself down and focused on the marrow cleansing technique. During the evening lesson, Chuli focused on chanting and kept all his distracting thoughts in his mind. Ding Kong sat beside him and chanted while glancing at him from time to time. These days, Chuli's body was constantly glowing, which made Ding Kong extremely envious and curious. While he was chanting, he paid attention to Chuli at all times. When he saw that Chuli's body was glowing again, his body was like a ball of flame, shining brightly. Smack! Old Monk Ji took a step forward and appeared in front of Chuli. Chuli suddenly stopped moving, and his low chanting stopped abruptly, as if he was a statue that had stopped. Ding Kong stared at him without blinking. It was as if Chuli had really died. There was no breath, no movement, and he could not be more dead than he was. Ding Kong quickly widened his eyes and looked at Old Monk Ji. Old Monk Ji opened his eyes and glanced at him. Ding Kong was instantly shocked. He could see the warning in Old Monk Ji's eyes, telling him not to move. Ding Kong was extremely confused, but he did not dare to act recklessly. After the evening lesson ended, Old Monk Ji put down the wooden fish and said slowly, "Do not make any noise. Leave us. Tomorrow's morning and evening lessons will be held in the side hall." "Honorable Master, why?" Ding Kong quickly asked. He looked at Chuli worriedly. Chuli did not move at all. He was still sitting on the cattail hassock with the curtains drawn. He was still motionless, as if he was dead. Old Monk Ji said slowly, "Chuli is going to cultivate in isolation. He has entered the meditative state. Do not make any noise or disturb him." "Junior brother Chu has entered the meditative state?" one of the monks asked in surprise. Although Chuli did not socialize much with the others these days, they would still attend morning and evening lessons together. The monks were curious about this junior brother who had just entered the sect. They all knew about his background and knew that he was a powerful person. However, they did not expect him to be this powerful. He had only cultivated for less than a month, and he had already entered the meditative state. This was a rare opportunity for Buddhist disciples. Once they entered the meditative state, they would have a deeper understanding of the Dharma. From then on, they would be able to jump out of their original state and step into another level. They would even be able to see through the secrets of life and death in the world. Don't think that it's because of his talent. In fact, it's because of his accumulation. He was originally a Buddhist cultivator and has a strong foundation in the Dharma. That's why he was able to enter the meditative state so quickly. Old Monk Ji said slowly. The old monk Ji said slowly, "Don't be impatient, disciples. Everyone has their own fate. Once the opportunity arrives, success will follow naturally." "Yes." Everyone bowed with pressed palms. "Go." Old Monk Ji waved his long sleeve. The crowd quietly retreated. Before they left, they all looked at Chuli. However, Chuli was still immersed in a daze. Once again, he entered the meditative state. Ding Kong looked at him enviously and left slowly. The Grandmaster boundary, the great light surpassing state. At the same time, Chuli also entered the meditative state. He was motionless and senseless. His body was surrounded by a faint brilliance. When Sun Mingyue saw him like this, she knew that entering the meditative state was no different from isolated cultivation. She vaguely understood that he must have had an epiphany in the upper heaven. Their souls were connected, which was why he was like this. This was a great opportunity that could not be missed or disturbed. Thus, she opened the formation and gently retreated, forbidding everyone from approaching. Chuli did not know when he woke up. When he slowly woke up, he only felt that something was different. Heaven and earth became extremely quiet, as if all sound had been lost. Everything in front of him became extraordinarily clear and bright. The colors were bright and moving. He was inexplicably touched and could not help but want to embrace everything. He had experienced this kind of strong impact many times. Every time, he could not resist it. It gave birth to a love for this world and a desire for life. He wanted to live longer and enjoy this kind of world. The world without sound became clearer. He did not need to divert his attention to listen. He only needed to look and see deeper. Chapter 26:02. Chuli said, I am also in isolation. Don't think about these useless things. The world is unpredictable. No one can predict it. Relax. Yes. Ji Mingfei lowered her head. Chu Li shook his head. This girl was stubborn and stubborn. Persuading her was useless. She had to think it through herself. According to his estimation, the girl would need some time before she could get over it. With such a personality, no matter how strong her martial arts was, she would only be looking for trouble. Chu Li asked, Are the four injured? I'm not too badly hurt. Ji Mingfei gritted her teeth. They saw that we were out of isolation and knew that we couldn't do anything, so they ran away. She was disgusted by the actions of the four men in black. They were so skilled in martial arts, but they used despicable sneak attacks. If they missed, they would run 1,000 miles away. It was hard to guard against and impossible to catch. Chu Li nodded slowly. Yes, let's go back. But the boundary master's arm. Ji Mingfei frowned worriedly. When the boundary master wakes up, she will be in pain. Chu Li smiled. It's just an arm. Don't worry. Tell the disciples in the boundary not to worry. Their arms and legs will grow back, and they can rest in peace. Really? Ji Mingfei was shocked. Her eyes widened. Chu Li said, When the boundary master recovers, she will naturally solve it. She has a way. Yes. Ji Mingfei quickly agreed. Tell them to go back. I am here, Chu Li said. Ji Mingfei agreed. The two suddenly returned to the light pool. Ji Mingfei pulled the other 3 women away, leaving only Chu Li and Sun Mingwei. Sun Mingwei slowly woke up. Chu Li looked at her and smiled. Sun Mingwei glared at him. What's so funny? Even without an arm, you still have a different style. Chu Li smiled. Sun Mingwei scoffed. Then try breaking an arm. What happened to you? She was extremely worried about Chu Li's state. He did not feel anything and thought he had lost his soul. Chu Li said, I entered the Great Mercy Temple. Its position in the upper heaven is similar to the Tempest Temple. When I was cultivating in the temple, I meditated for a year and mastered the divine ear. Sun Mingwei rolled her eyes. Your martial arts improved greatly, but I was unlucky. You must be a heavenly demon realm master. Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingwei said, There's such a top expert in the Sky Fiend realm. She knew that her cultivation level had reached the paramount realm. Although the 4 Sky Fiend realm experts could not defeat her, their combined might was extremely powerful. Furthermore, it was sudden and unexpected, making it difficult to guard against. She was still a bit careless, thinking that her cultivation was deep and unparalleled. Even though she had always acted cautiously, it was hard to avoid being careless in the depths of her heart, which led to her being ambushed. However, she still heavily injured the 4 fellows, or else she wouldn't have retreated so easily. Chu Li said, It can only be a 10,000-year master from the arcane realm. I see. Sun Mingwei nodded slowly. Chu Li said, Use the ageless longevity technique. You'll be able to regrow your arm in no time. Sun Mingwei sighed and said, We can't let all the disciples cultivate the art of immortality, can we? This is not a good martial art. The ageless live forever technique was too vicious. If all the disciples learned it, it would probably arouse the vigilance and hostility of the other sections. Chu Li smiled and said, Don't you want to be the world's #1? Are you afraid that they will criticize you? All right. Sun Mingwei was decisive. Then we'll teach them the ageless longevity technique. The sect needs to grow more evergreens. Chu Li nodded. I'll bring some seeds over. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared on the peak of 100,000 hills, surrounded by a lush forest of 10,000-year green pines. He was just trying to see if his god's limbs had been strengthened. Just as he expected, his divine power had been greatly strengthened, and the true power of God's limbs was revealed. It was even better than void diversion. If it was void diversion, he would need to go through the divine gate to come over, but God's limbs could disregard the boundary of the void and come down directly. He had a slight thought, and his body swayed, but he couldn't move. He shook his head and smiled. Just as he expected, he couldn't directly appear in the upper heaven. His divine power wasn't enough. The next moment, he disappeared on the spot and appeared next to the light pool. The next moment, he disappeared again and returned to 100,000 hills. His divine power could freely travel between the two worlds, but he couldn't step into the upper heaven. He felt that if he cultivated in the outer temple of Great Mercy Temple for a few more years, he might be able to directly use God's limbs to reach the upper heaven without ascension. After taking some evergreen seeds, he returned to the light pool and handed them to Sun Mingwei. Sun Mingwei used the ageless longevity technique to absorb her lifespan. Her originally empty sleeves slowly expanded, and finally, her jade-white hands and arms formed, looking no different from before. She stretched them in front of him, admired them for a while, and was satisfied. "I'll go to the heavenly demonic realm," Chu Li said. "No need." Sun Mingwei hurriedly waved her hand. Chu Li turned to look at her. Sun Mingwei said, "I can't let you do everything. I'll do it myself." Chu Li didn't insist. Sun Mingwei was proud and would definitely not allow him to help her all the time, so he was happy to slack off. "Forget it. I obtained a palm leaf scripture that can purify cultivation," Chu Li said. "I'll pass it to you. It can purify cultivation very quickly. Try it." As soon as he said that, he pointed at Sun Mingwei. Sun Mingwei didn't dodge. She took the palm leaf scripture from the traction technique, recited it softly, and began to channel it. Soon she smiled. As expected of a martial art from the upper heaven, it's really powerful. Chu Li nodded. "Then I'll go to the lower realm to take a look." Go, and take a look at that disciple of mine," Sun Mingwei said. Chu Li disappeared in a flash. Sun Mingwei left the great light surpassing realm, and Jiming, Fei, and the other 3 women were waiting outside. When they saw her intact, right arm, they stared at her in surprise. Sun Mingwei said, "I have a technique for regrowing lost limbs. Teach it to the disciples." As she said that, she pointed at the foreheads of the 4 women, put the evergreen seeds aside, and returned to the light pool to cultivate the palm leaf scripture. Jit Dynasty Palace, the hundreds of flowers in the imperial garden were covered by the white snow, and everything around was pure white. The pagoda was covered by a white gauze curtain, and inside, steam curled up and the fragrance of tea filled the air. In the pagoda, Seosher sat alone, holding a teacup and sipping. Her bright eyes were dim, and she was lonely and cold. The maids around her were nowhere to be seen, and she was the only one in the entire imperial garden, holding the teacup like it was a wine cup. There were no traces of time on her beautiful face. After consuming the grass of immortality, she was forever youthful, and her appearance would not age. However, there was a layer of loneliness between her brows, as if she was the only person in the world. "Good tea." Suddenly, a hearty laugh was heard, and Chu Li appeared in front of her. Seosher rolled her eyes at Chu Li without a change in expression and scoffed. "You finally remembered to come here." Chu Li smiled, sat down, and poured himself a cup of tea. Seosher asked about his experience and Xiaoqi's current situation, and Chu Li told her everything in detail. Unknowingly, it was already midnight. "Second eldest sister, do you still want to stay here and not go up?" Chu Li asked. Seosher shook her head lightly. "If I go up, I'll only be a burden to all of you. It's better to stay here." Chu Li thought for a while and reached out his hand to press between her brows and cast the traction skill. After a while, she opened her eyes and a cold glare shot out, and the curtains around the pagoda fluttered. Chapter 2604. Chu Li smiled as he looked at her. Her face was crystal clear, as if it was carved out of white jade. Her beautiful eyes shone brightly, as if they could see through one's heart. She looked at him in shock. "I am..." Chu Li smiled. "Congratulations, second elder sister. You become a top-notch master." He dared not transfer all of his inner energy over as his body would not be able to withstand it. However, 1/10 of his cultivation level was already top-notch in this world. It was even close to the limit of ascension. It's amazing. Seosher sighed softly. She could feel that her five senses had broken through their original limits, and her voice had become meticulous. Wherever she looked, she could even see the grain of the plants, as well as every small depression and bulge. Everything in the world had become clear, and she was moved by what she saw. Chu smiled. Remember this feeling? You'll get numb after a while. Seosher asked, what's the standard of my cultivation level now? Chu pondered. If you're careful, no one can threaten your safety. However, you must not be careless. No one can be invincible. No matter how strong your martial arts is, you'll still be defeated. I understand. You can easily create a master? Seosher waved her hand. Chu said, I'll only pass it to you. You have to let go of your body and mind. You have to believe it with all your heart and not doubt it. All right. Seosher nodded helplessly. I didn't know there's such a restriction. She was slightly disappointed. Chu smiled. Second elder sister. Who else do you want me to pass it to? I found a successor. Seosher said. Chu was surprised. You found a successor? He was worried about Seosher. What kind of successor should she find? Lung family or Xiao family? Logically speaking, the Lung family was the legitimate heir. However, the current situation was that she was the empress. No one dared to talk about returning power to the Lung family. The 12 public houses were the legitimate heirs of the Great Ji dynasty. If this continued, after a few decades, the old courtiers would retire, and there would be no courtiers loyal to the Lung family. The Great Ji dynasty would become the Great Ji dynasty of the Xiao family. Even if there were some loyal people who were willing to take the risk to launch a coup, it would still be impossible for them to succeed. The other countries had also tacitly agreed to the Xiao family inheriting the Ji dynasty. This was due to Chu Li's remaining influence and the existence of Goddess Attraction Mountain. The immortal Attraction Mountain had been destroyed in the realm beyond heaven, and they had fled to this world in a sorry state. However, the people of this world did not know the situation. The immortal Attraction Mountain was still the #1 sect in the world, and no one could stop them. Moreover, Chu Li's reputation in the Outland was growing, and his power was flourishing day by day. Sun Mingwei was the surpassing light realm's boundary master, and Lu Yurong was the Azura goddess, which further boosted his prestige. No celestial dared to provoke him, and the revival of Goddess Attraction Mountain was inevitable. Xiaoshi said, the son of Lung Xiaoxi, Lung Tingjian. Lung Xiaoxi? Chu Li was silent. He had a good relationship with Lung Xiaoxi. They could be considered fair-weather friends. He had been to the New Moon brothel a few times, but he did not expect Seosher to choose Lung Xiaoxi's son. Lung Xiaoxi loved to enjoy life. He did not have much ambition, but when his son became the crown prince and inherited the throne in the future, he would be the retired emperor. No matter how much he loved to enjoy life, he would inevitably have some ambition, right? The little fella has been brought to the palace. Seosher sighed. He's 10 years old. I want to keep him by my side and teach him well, so that he won't ruin the Great Ji dynasty in the future. Chu Li said, that's good too. He trusted Seosher's political wisdom. There was no need to worry. Clap, clap. 2 crisp sounds were heard. A palace made from outside the imperial garden came in quietly and bowed in greeting. Let Su-Ru bring the crown prince here, Seosher said. Yes. The maid left quietly. After a while, Su-Ru came in wearing an apricot yellow gown. Beside her was a child who reached her waist. The boy looked like he was carved out of jade. His eyes were clear and full of life. His lips were tightly pursed, and he called out in a clear and obedient voice, Your Majesty. When Su-Ru saw Chu Li, her eyes widened. Chu Li smiled. Long time no see, Miss Su. I didn't expect you to come back, head chief. Su-Ru pursed her lips and smiled. Head chief, you should come back more often. The emperor is the only one in such a big imperial palace. It's too lonely. Chu Li nodded lightly. Seosher rolled her eyes and said, You talk too much. She extended her hand, and the child came forward and jumped into her arms. Co sure patted the child's head and smiled. Let's meet the head chief. Greetings, head chief. Lung Tingjian looked at Chu Li curiously. He had heard many legends about the head chief. At this moment, he saw Chu Li sitting there normally. He also had one head, 2 hands, and 2 legs. He was not as evil as others said. He did not have 3 heads and 6 arms. Chu Li smiled. It seems that His Highness the Crown Prince is a little disappointed. I wouldn't dare. Lung Tingjian was shocked. Chu Li nodded and looked at Co sure. His Highness the Crown Prince is also a person who learns early. Second sister, your eyes are really sharp and accurate. This little guy has been hiding his incompetence, but he can't escape my eyes, Co sure scoffed. From your point of view, can he take on such a big responsibility? Chu Li looked at Lung Tingjian from head to toe and squinted his eyes. Lung Tingjian only felt that the bottom of his heart was exposed in his eyes, and there was nowhere to hide. He was instantly shocked and wanted to hide and not look at him. Chu Li nodded slowly and smiled thoughtfully. Second sister, don't treat him like a child. He is mature and knowledgeable. He is already in his 20s and can be considered a genius. Although this Lung Tingjian was not reincarnated and did not have the memories of his past life, but his wisdom was developed at an early age, and he was sensible at an early age. In the words of the future, he had a high IQ, far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. At 10 years old, he already knew more than a 30-year-old. Co sure smiled and nodded. Yes. Chu Li said, second sister found an impressive crown prince. Just being smart is not enough. He needs to be tempered. Co sure shook her head. How can one become successful without going through setbacks? Back then, we went through so many hardships, so many desperate situations. Chu Li nodded slowly. The past floated in his mind, and his heart warmed. Both of them were sharp and connected, and could understand each other's thoughts with just a look. Unfortunately, they were now separated by 2 worlds and even 3 worlds apart. When are you going to ascend? Chu Li asked. No rush. Co sure shook her head. Chu Li sighed and did not try to persuade her anymore. He suddenly raised his voice. Fa Yuan, since you're here, why don't you show yourself? Brother Chu. Fa Yuan's gray frock fluttered, and he walked under the moonlight and landed in front of Chu Li. Oomph. Great Master, Fa Yuan's cultivation level has improved again. The formation can't stop him. Co sure sneered. Fa Yuan pressed his palms together, and a smile appeared on his calm face. Forgive me, Your Majesty. Brother Chu, how have you been? Chu Li smiled. Monk, are you going to ascend? He could see that Fa Yuan's inner energy was turbulent, but it was completely restrained and became one with heaven and earth. He was already half a step into the realm of ascension. It's not easy for a little monk to ascend. Fa Yuan shook his head and looked at Co sure. Co sure suddenly gained power and tried to restrain it. Ordinary people could not see it, but it could not hide it from Fa Yuan. His cultivation level was already in the 1st realm, but now he was in the 2nd realm and was blocked again. Co sure said coldly, if you want to ascend, no one will stop you. Fa Yuan smiled without saying a word and looked at Chu Li. Chapter 26:05. Monk, the path to becoming a god cannot be rushed. The foundation is too important. Chu Li pondered. After becoming a god and stepping into the Grandmaster's boundary, you will enter the boundless surpassing state. The boundless surpassing state is full of Buddhism. If you want to stand out there, you need to have a strong foundation. If you rush there, you might be lost in the crowd. Everyone there has a deep root of wisdom, far better than our world. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the sky, rolling faintly. Chu Li looked up and sneered, ignoring it. Fa Yuan's expression changed slightly. He quickly said, Brother Chu, don't say what you shouldn't. The secrets of heaven must not be revealed. Chu Li scoffed. I'd like to see what the secrets of heaven are like. He had already lost respect for the Grandmaster's boundary. Even the divine thunder was only controlled by the thunder pool, and he and the thunder pool were like fire and water. They were the same, but they might not dare to provoke him, or else Song Wuji would kill them while he was in isolation. The thunder rumbled faintly, but it did not approach. Fa Yuan sighed in relief. I'm a little impatient, Chu Li said, and the Grandmaster's boundary is not peaceful now. Why not wait a little longer? Brother Chu, when is the right time to ascend? Fa Yuan asked. Chu Li pondered. After a while, other than second sister, there's only you in the Ji dynasty. You two don't have to rush. Co sure scoffed in disdain. I'm not in a hurry. Fa Yuan is the one who is in a hurry. How ridiculous. Fa Yuan helplessly shook his head and smiled bitterly. Chu Li smiled. Monk, what difficulties do you have? Brother Chu, you're not an outsider. There's no harm in telling you. Fa Yuan sighed. My lifespan is short. I might not be able to hold on for too long. Chu Li carefully looked at him and frowned. What secret skill is this? Fa Yuan shook his head. Chu Li's gaze focused and shone into his body. He pointed at his heart. What is this? Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, he saw an object in Fa Yuan's dantian. It was round like a luminous pearl, emitting a soft golden light. It looked like a sarira. It's the Dipankara sarira, Fa Yuan sighed. Chu Li's brows twitched. He searched through the books in his mind, then shook his head. What is the Dipankara sarira? It's a fortuitous encounter that I stumbled upon. Unfortunately, this fortuitous encounter is also a calamity. Fa Yuan sighed and said, with this relic, I'll be able to master the Dharma as soon as I learn it. My power will increase exponentially, and I'll be able to advance very quickly. Chu Li nodded. It's using its lifespan as the price? That's right. Fa Yuan revealed a helpless expression. The faster the power increases, the greater the loss of lifespan. Chu Li smiled. The Tempest Temple should have life-prolonging pills, right? Or perhaps there's a life-prolonging technique. I've already used it, Fa Yuan said. Unfortunately, it's just a drop in the bucket. It's useless. Chu Li said, it's useless even if you want to ascend, right? You need 100 years to go up. How about this? I have a technique that can prolong your life. I'll pass it on to you. He thought about passing the art of ageless longevity to Fa Yuan. Ageless longevity technique? Fa Yuan muttered. Chu Li said, the art of eternal agility allows one to plunder the lifespan of other objects for one's own use. You can look for a pine tree. Killing a sentient object is killing, so you should look for an emotionless object. Fa Yuan hesitated. He felt that the art of eternal agility was not a good technique. It was slightly evil. Does the Church of Longevity have anything to do with the art of eternal agility? Fa Yuan asked. Chu Li said, the art of eternal agility is a secret technique that only the bishop of the Church of Longevity can cultivate. Thank you, Brother Chu. Fa Yuan muttered and bowed with pressed palms. He finally decided to accept the art of eternal agility. As long as he took the lifespan of an emotionless object for his own use, it would not be considered as breaking the precept. Monk, let's make a deal, Chu Li said. Fa Yuan smiled. You have to protect second eldest sister's safety. Don't let anyone take advantage of her. Chu Li pointed at Co Sure. Co Sure rolled her eyes at Chu Li. I'll let him protect her. Chu Li looked at Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan nodded slowly. I'll stay in the fairy's capital. All right. Chu Li smiled and said, listen to me. He softly passed the heart technique of the art of eternal agility to Fa Yuan. Fa Yuan listened and nodded thoughtfully. His comprehension was extraordinary. He understood at the moment he heard it. He tried to circulate it and understood its wonders. The Dipankara sarira boosted his comprehension. When he tried to circulate it for the second time, it was as if he had cultivated it for 100 times. When he tried it for the third time, it was as if he had cultivated it for 1,000 times. He was already very familiar with it. He took a step forward and came to the side of a plum tree. He pressed it lightly and quickly let go. The plum tree did not react, but he could clearly feel a strange force entering and merging with the Dipankara sarira. The Dipankara sarira's absorption of his body slowed down and calmed down. Co Sure scoffed. Don't hurt my plum tree. Fa Yuan bowed with pressed palms. Chuli smiled. Monk, how is it? As expected of the art of eternal agility. Fa Yuan sighed. This technique is really overbearing. It's better to use it carefully. Chuli said, don't use it unless it's absolutely necessary. With this, your Dipankara Saraira will be incredible. Sigh. Fa Yuan smiled bitterly. He would rather not have this Saraira. His comprehension was high enough. As long as he had enough time, he did not need to burn the Saraira to help him. It could shorten the time needed to understand, but it would also shorten his lifespan. It was better not to have it. Where did you get it from? Chuli asked. Fa Yuan said, in the ruins of a temple. There were only 2 of them. However, this item is only beneficial for the dermic base and not for martial arts. Brother Chu, you don't cultivate the dermic base, so it's useless for you to have it. Chuli shook his head. I'm curious about all magical items. Why don't you give me the other one? Fine, I'll give it a try, Fa Yuan said. This item no longer belongs to me. It's returned to the temple. I need to report this to the abbot. Hurry up and ask, Chuli said. Fa Yuan bowed with pressed palms and suddenly disappeared. Seosher frowned and looked at him. Why do you want that harmful Saraira? It's just an old monk who sealed his lifetime's cultivation in the Saraira and used his lifespan to unlock these insights. It's just the dermic base. It's a treasure to a monk, but it's useless to you. Chuli smiled. I'm just curious. How's Ling Meng doing? She's the second Sun Minghua. She's very impressive. Seosher said. She's tough and has superb tactics. She's very similar to Sun Minghua. Chuli nodded lightly. That's good. He suddenly appeared in great light, surpassing boundary. He saw Li Meng reading through documents in the Divine Light Basilica. He did not disturb her and only looked at her. Her clothes were as white as snow, and her face was covered by a white veil. If he was not familiar with Sun Minghua, he would have thought that it was Sun Minghua sitting there. He thought for a while and took out a jade pendant. He placed it in her courtyard and then floated away. He returned to the imperial garden of the Ji Imperial Palace. It was brightly lit. Suru had already left with Lung Tingjian. Only Seosher was left in the courtyard. Her jade-like hand rested on her chin as she pondered. She once again revealed her loneliness. Chuli's lower body was slightly sore, but he pretended to be fine. He sat opposite her and smiled at her beautiful face. She lowered her eyes and did not look at Chuli. She quietly pondered. Fa Yuan appeared again. He bowed with pressed palms and said, Brother Chu, the abbot has agreed. As he spoke, he took out a small square box from his wide sleeve. It was about the length of an index thumb. It was small and exquisite. Chuli did not reach out to take it. He asked, What's the abbot's condition? Chapter 26:06. Fa Yuan shook his head. Chuli looked at him deeply. Say it. You can't hide it from me. Fa Yuan sighed. Brother Chu, I don't have any conditions. A monk doesn't lie. Chuli scoffed. Monk, you want to break the precepts? Fa Yuan said. The abbot wants his majesty to give way and let me become a god first. No problem. Chuli nodded. Second sister won't become a god. She has to cultivate to become one. Really? Fa Yuan was shocked. Chuli said, You'll know once you think about it. Compared to becoming a god, cultivating to become one is more wonderful. That's it. Fa Yuan smiled. Chuli smiled and reached out to take the Dipankara Saraira. When he opened it, he saw that it was a gray stone about the size of a fingernail. He could not tell what was so special about it, but it attracted his attention. Chant the infinite life scripture, and it will naturally fall into your dantian, Fa Yuan said. Chuli muttered the infinite life scripture. The gray stone in the small box suddenly flashed and disappeared in the next moment. Chuli felt a light in his chest, and an object appeared. It was round like a luminous pearl and emitted a gentle light. Just as it was about to spin and absorb his lifespan, a lotus suddenly fell in the void of his mind. This transparent lotus seemed real and illusory. It fell from his mind to his central dantian and floated to the Dipankara Saraira. The light flashed and then disappeared. It seemed to have disappeared, but Chu Li could feel its existence. It was just that there was no light and no trace of it. It merged with the lotus formed by the palm leaf scripture and turned into an illusion. Chu Li frowned and chanted the infinite life scripture again. The Saraira in his chest suddenly shone and rotated to absorb his lifespan. It then turned into a force and entered his mind. He suddenly felt a sense of familiarity and understanding of many Buddhist doctrines. He stopped chanting the infinite life scripture and started chanting the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. As he chanted the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture, the Dipankara Saraira was still rotating and emitting light. The force entered his mind, and he had an inexplicable understanding of the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. He felt that it was perfect, but now he realized that it was not enough. Next was Mahavairocana's immobility scripture. His understanding of Mahavairocana's immobility scripture deepened. Next was the great light scripture and the heavenly demon scripture. Unfortunately, it did not work on the heavenly demon scripture. Under the enhancement of the various scriptures, the Buddhas in his mind also became more vivid. Chu Li opened his eyes and smiled. Fa Yuan looked at him in confusion. "Brother Chu, are you going to practice Buddhism?" Chu Li nodded. "I'm originally from a Buddhist family. With the Dipankara Saraira, my understanding of Buddhism has deepened, and I've gained endless benefits." Fa Yuan nodded in understanding. The deeper one's understanding of Buddhism, the easier it is to practice martial arts. Wisdom is interlinked. Xiao Shi frowned as she stared at Chu Li. Fa Yuan said, "Then I shall take my leave. I shall stay in Fairy's capital from tomorrow onwards." Chu Li smiled and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you with second sister's safety." Fa Yuan bowed with pressed palms and floated away. Xiao Shi asked, "Why are you suddenly interested in Buddhism? Don't tell me you're thinking of becoming a monk?" Chu Li smiled and shook his head. "I'm leaving too. I'll be back in a few days." A few days." Xiao Shi pouted. The few days that Chu Li was talking about could be a few months. Chu Li smiled. "It's more convenient to go back and forth now. My god's limbs are more powerful now, so I don't have to use the divine gate all the time." As he spoke, he disappeared in a flash. He returned to the great light surpassing state and saw that the disciples were working hard on their cultivation. The original gloominess disappeared, and they regained their high spirits. With the ageless longevity technique, they were not afraid of broken limbs. They could recover to their original state, so they no longer had any fear in their hearts. In the great light surpassing state, the dead could be resurrected, and the disabled could be recovered. What was there to be afraid of? If the enemy came, they could just fight with their lives. Under the situation where they were not afraid of death, they could win no matter how strong the opponent was. Sun Mingwei was nowhere to be seen. He focused his ears and immediately heard Sun Mingwei's voice. "Yurong, do you know anything about the heavenly demonic realm?" Sun Mingwei's voice was cold and mellow, but it was even more tenacious and unquestionable. This was the tone that she had cultivated as a bishop. Yurong's voice sounded, "For top-notch masters. This must be the work of a concealed realm master. With your current cultivation level, a normal concealed realm master would not be able to do it." "Then which sect is it?" Sun Mingwei scoffed. Yurong said, "Do you want to break into the heavenly demonic realm and kill the 4 concealed realm masters?" "Yes," Sun Mingwei said. "Then you underestimate the concealed realm masters," Yurong said. "The so-called arcane realm is something that outsiders cannot peek into. If they enter the arcane realm, you will not be able to find them." He could see their situation from the way they were talking. The 2 women were standing in front of 2 deity king statues, each staring at a deity king statue as they talked. This was the mystery of the divine ear. "I still have you," Sun Mingwei said. Yurong said, "I am only the Azura goddess, not the heavenly demon of the heavenly demonic realm. According to what I know, 2 more arcane realms have appeared, the phaseless sect and the peerless sect. The 4 masters are most likely the 2 strongest concealed realm masters of the 2 sections. The phaseless sect and the peerless sect." Sun Mingwei scoffed. "Why would they go against me? They must be colluding with the Grandmaster realm, Yurong said. The biggest possibility is the Thunder Pool. It seems that Song Wuji is colluding with the heavenly demonic realm. Chuli had a clone in the heavenly demonic realm, and Song Wuji did the same. Although the two were enemies, their way of doing things and background were similar. Chu Li's rise was faster than Song Wuji's, and he stole Song Wuji's limelight. The Thunder Pool must hate Chu Li and feel injustice for Song Wuji. Other than the Thunder Pool, there was no other sect that hated Sun Mingyue so much. The Thunder Pool, Sun Mingyue scoffed. I will destroy them sooner or later. Yurong chuckled. Sun Mingyue scoffed. What, you don't believe me? Let's wait until Chu Li defeats Song Wuji first, Yurong said. Sun Mingyue said, defeating Song Wuji won't be a problem. Chu Li had a fortuitous encounter on the upper heaven, so his cultivation level has become purer and more profound. On the other hand, Song Wuji might not be able to defeat Chu Li in isolated cultivation. That's true, Yurong said. Then let's see when Song Wuji comes out. Chu Li heard this and smiled. He no longer cared about how Sun Mingyue would take revenge. He summoned Jiming Fei and told her that he would continue his isolated cultivation and not to be disturbed. Early in the morning, when Chu Li returned to the Sky Heart courtyard after his morning classes, he saw Monk Huiguang. Monk Huiguang's robe fluttered as he stood quietly under the courtyard wall with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the clouds in the sky, motionless like a tree. Chu Li went forward and pressed his palms together. Master! Chu Li, a year has passed. Are you ready? Monk Huiguang turned around and asked gently, Master! Yes. Chu Li nodded slowly. Monk Huiguang smiled. You will officially tonsure tomorrow and formally observe the precepts. Yes. Chu Li nodded without hesitation. Have you thought it through? Monk Huiguang said slowly. Once you become a monk, you must cut yourself off from the mortal world and abandon your worldly ties. A loving couple will become strangers, and from then on, you will no longer have anything to do with each other. Chu Li sighed. I have thought it through. Monk Huiguang said, once you become a monk, if you break the precepts again, the temple's rules are strict and there will be no mercy. Chu Li said, thank you, Master. I know what you're thinking, Monk Huiguang said. Focus on cultivating for 100 years, and then continue the relationship after 100 years. P.S. Update complete. Chapter 26:07. Chu Li was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on him. Monk Huiguang was on very good terms with Eugene, so it was obvious that he had heard about Shao Qi from Eugene. He knew that Shao Qi was going to go in an isolated cultivation for 100 years, so he immediately guessed Chu Li's plan. Chu Li remained silent. Monk Huiguang said, if you can't truly cut off your worldly ties, it's better for you to be a monk disciple. Chu Li sighed. Master, if I break the precepts, what's the punishment? Monk Huiguang said, your martial arts will be crippled, and you'll be kicked out of the temple. You won't even be a monk disciple then. His meaning was clear. Instead of being crippled and kicked out of the temple in the future, it was better to be a monk disciple now. He could come and go freely and stay with his wife. Chu Li said, if I cripple my martial arts and cultivate it again, will the temple still pursue this matter? Monk Huiguang laughed and shook his head. Do you think you'll be able to cultivate it back if the temple cripples your martial arts? How naive. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Monk Huiguang scoffed. The temple uses a secret skill to cripple one's martial arts. It's impossible to cultivate it back after becoming a cripple. Moreover, profound martial arts require profound dharma. If you can't cut off your worldly ties, you won't be able to achieve dharma, and you won't be able to cultivate your martial arts to a profound level. Chu Li smiled. If that's the case, how did I manage to cultivate the divine ear? Monk Huiguang frowned and remained silent. This was exactly what he did not understand. It was also what all the monks in the temple did not understand. Logically speaking, if Chu Li had fetters and worries, it should be because his spirit was not pure and his mind was not empty. He would not be able to enter a deep state of meditation, and it would be impossible for him to cultivate divine powers. However, he managed to cultivate divine powers in just a year, breaking their common sense and precedent. It was strange to them, and they were even more surprised when they found out that Chu Li had also cultivated God's limbs. There were also many eminent monks in the outer temple of the Great Mercy Temple who possessed 2 supernatural powers or even several supernatural powers. But usually they had cultivated for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. Their mortal hearts had been purified, and the pearls of their hearts had shone brightly. Only then, when the conditions were right, would they naturally possess multiple supernatural powers. Chu Li, on the other hand, was completely different. He was bringing along a beautiful wife with him. Their feelings were intense, which was the exact opposite of seeing through and freeing himself. How could he achieve 2 divine powers? It could only be said that he had been born in a monastery since he was young. Perhaps he was the reincarnation of an eminent monk and possessed innate wisdom. Chu Li said, "Master, it's not a problem for me to cultivate Buddhism." Monk Hui Guang hesitated. He didn't want to harm Chu Li. He vaguely felt that Chu Li was in the secular world and had a beautiful wife, but he still had such a deep understanding of Buddhism. It could only be said that his Buddha nature was deep and far superior to ordinary people. It was very likely that he was the reincarnation of an eminent monk, just like what the seniors had said. Without seeing through the mortal world and life and death, it was very difficult to obtain divine abilities. This was an undeniable fact. To be able to see through both, this kind of temperament was not something that he could reach. He could only say that he was impressed. However, no matter how much they admired him, they still could not violate the rules of the temple. If they really broke the precepts, their martial arts would be crippled, and in serious cases, they would be expelled from the temple. Crippling his martial arts was inevitable, but expelling him from the temple depended on the severity of the consequences. In order to make Chu Li back out, he made it sound even more serious. However, Chu Li had excellent aptitude and was a top-notch talent. Once he had a profound Buddhism, he would definitely improve by leaps and bounds when he cultivated the martial arts of the Great Mercy Temple. Moreover, he would be able to cultivate it to an extremely high level. Once he cultivated it, he would definitely become a top-notch master. Monk Hui Guang really couldn't bear to stop him. Forget it, Monk Hui Guang sighed. He pressed his palms together and bowed in the direction of the inner temple of the Great Mercy Temple. He muttered a mantra as if he was repenting for his sins. After a while, he looked up at Chu Li. "I'll only talk about what happened today. Fate is unpredictable, and no one can predict everything. If you want to abide by the precepts, then shave your head." "Thank you, Master." Chu Li smiled and pressed his palms together. Monk Hui Guang sighed. "I hope you won't regret this decision in the future." Chu Li smiled. "I definitely won't regret it." Amipa. Monk Hui Guang pressed his palms together with a solemn expression. In the basilica of the outer temple, in front of the huge Buddha statue, Chu Li was kneeling on a cattail hassock. His eyes were slightly closed, and he was motionless. Close to 100 old monks stood on both sides of the basilica. All of them looked solemn and dignified, and their auras were as steady as Buddha statues. More than 200 middle-aged monks stood outside the basilica, and behind them stood more than 100 young monks. Monk Hui Guang stood in front of him, and the novice monk Ding Ming stood beside him. The handsome Ding Ming held a small sandalwood incense tray with both hands, and his expression was solemn. Under the watchful eyes of the old monks, Monk Hui Guang first chanted the 7 precepts of the Great Mercy Temple. Then he asked Chu Li, "Is it possible to abide by the precepts?" "Yes," Chu Li answered respectfully. "Today, I'll get rid of the root of my troubles and cut off all ties with the mortal world." Monk Hui Guang gently brushed his right palm across the top of Chu Li's head. His hair rustled as it fell, and a shiny bald head appeared. This made Chu Li's straight eyebrows look even sharper, and his heroic spirit even more prominent. Monk Hui Guang extended his hand, and Ding Ming hurriedly offered him the incense tray. There were 3 thick incense sticks burning on the tray. Monk Huiguang picked up the 3 thick incense sticks and first turned to worship the Buddha statue. Then, he turned back and pressed the incense on Chu Li's head. Chu Li felt a splitting headache, as if there were 3 nails piercing into his head. He frowned, but he did not move. He knew that there was something strange about these 3 incense sticks, and they were definitely different from ordinary incense sticks. Ordinary incense sticks would not leave a mark on his head, and he would not feel any pain either. Monk Huiguang picked up the 3 thick incense sticks, and 3 black spots had already appeared on top of Chu Li's head. Chu Li, today, I will bestow upon you the Dharma name of Ding Ru. I hope that your heart will remain the same, and you will not be distracted. Monk Huiguang said in a low voice. Thank you, Master. Chu Li pressed his palms together and bowed. Monk Huiguang picked up a gray robe from the incense tray beside him. Chu Li stood up. Monk Huiguang draped the gray robe over his body, and Chu Li took the opportunity to put it on, covering the white robe. The gray robe was simple, and the ring scar on Chu Li's bald head was obvious. Coupled with the simple gray robe, he had a unique temperament. When he wore the gray robe, there was not a hint of incongruity, as if he was born to wear this robe. There was not a single part that was not ironed, and there was not a single part that was not pleasing to the eye. Monk Huiguang said in a low voice, Ding Ru, from today onwards, you will be a disciple of the Great Mercy Temple. From now on, when you travel the world, you must abide by the precepts. If you break the precepts, the temple will naturally punish you according to the rules. Yes, Master. Chu Li pressed his palms together. Monk Huiguang pressed his palms together and bowed to the crowd. Thank you, honorable masters, for coming here to witness. Amipa. The old monks pressed their palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Their voices were deep and solemn. Chu Li saluted the crowd. A tall old monk with white eyebrows and a ruddy complexion slowly walked towards Chu Li and said gently, Ding Ru, you have a strong Buddhist nature. Even if you cultivate martial arts, don't neglect your Buddhist-based cultivation. Yes, Abbot. Chu Li pressed his palms together. This old monk's Dharma name was Xing, and he was the abbot of the Great Mercy Temple. He did not know martial arts, but he had several divine powers that were deeply hidden and unknown to outsiders. Monk Huiguang said, Abbot, I will bring Ding Ru to the inner temple to cultivate today. Let's stay in the outer temple. Abbot Xing said slowly, We will stay in the Skywell courtyard. Huiguang hesitated. Xing smiled and said, Ding Ru is a seed of Buddhism. Even if she cultivates martial arts with you, Huiguang, she will still focus on the Buddhist base. Chapter 26:08. Chu Li smiled helplessly. Luo unraveled the disagreement between the outer temple and the inner temple had always been there, and it was getting bigger. He was stuck in the middle and did not know how difficult his future would be. Monk Huiguang said gently, Ding Ru, cultivate in the Sky Heart courtyard, or you can go to the inner temple's training field. You can't cultivate behind closed doors. You should communicate more. Yes, Master. Chu Li put his palms together. He put his palms together again and bowed to the old monks. The old monks put their palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. They slowly left the hall under Xing's lead. Monk Huiguang looked at him deeply and left the hall too. He was the only one left in the hall. The huge Buddha statue was the only companion in the empty hall, staring at him mercifully. Chu Li suddenly felt a little melancholy. He had become a monk just like that. Although he grew up in the temple, it was his first time becoming a monk. Even if he decided to renounce his vows after 100 years, there was still a different feeling in his heart. Junior brother, Monk Ding Kong ran in happily and patted his shoulder. You've finally entered the inner temple. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Early in the morning, Chu Li stood in the inner temple's training field. Beside him were many young monks who were training in full swing. He was dressed in a short gray robe, but his sleeves were tied up. He stood there quietly and channeled the marrow cleansing technique without moving an inch. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, He could clearly see that his bone marrow was like silver and mercury, shining brightly. The marrow cleansing technique had been cultivated to its ultimate state. There was no way to cultivate it anymore. This was the result of a year of meditation. He was also cultivating the marrow cleansing technique in the Grandmaster, but he had not reached the ultimate state. His bone marrow had not reached the silver state and needed a longer time to cultivate. However, the improvement of his body was huge, and it was better than the heavenly demonic herb. This soul lotus body had great potential, but it had reached a very pure level. It was much easier to cultivate to the ultimate state than the Grandmaster. Footsteps were heard. Chuli had the divine ear and was especially sensitive to sounds. He knew it was Monk Hui Guang at first glance. Monk Hui Guang arrived in his gray robe. Master. Chuli put his palms together. Monk Hui Guang smiled. He was very satisfied with Chu Li's comprehension. His words were vague, as if he did not say anything, but he wanted to see if Chu Li could understand it. If he did not come to the inner temple's martial arts field, he would not teach him martial arts for a while. If Chu Li could understand it, he would immediately teach him martial arts when he came to the inner temple's martial arts field. Do you have any martial arts that you want to cultivate? Monk Hui Guang asked. Chu Li said, I heard that the dragon elephant wisdom is very mysterious. Monk Hui Guang said, the dragon and elephant prajna technique is wonderful, but it is not the strongest. Most of the martial arts in the Great Mercy Temple are about the same. It all depends on the cultivator's realm. The dragon and elephant prajna technique is one of the top martial arts. There are other martial arts. Do you want to give it a try? Chu Li shook his head. I'll use the dragon elephant wisdom then. The Great Mercy's Temple's most famous martial art was the art of dragon and elephant prajna, as well as the art of heavenly dragon. There is also the art of heavenly dragon, but the art of taming tiger and the rest of the martial arts were unknown for a reason. More importantly, the Great Mercy's Temple practiced the art of dragon and elephant prajna the most and had the most experience. Although he was proud of his comprehension, he did not want to waste his energy. Not cultivating the most famous dragon and elephant wisdom was asking for trouble. He did not want to take the easy road, but chose to take the rugged path. All right then, I'll teach you the dragon and elephant wisdom. Monk Hui Guang did not try to persuade him anymore. He said slowly, the so-called prajna does not mean that it has the ability to increase the prajna, but it needs the prajna. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Monk Hui Guang said, the most important thing to cultivate this martial art is the dermic base. Only with enough wisdom can you advance bravely, or else it will be difficult to advance. Chu Li nodded slowly. Monk Hui Guang said, you have a deep dermic base. It is indeed suitable for you to cultivate this. This is a copy of the dragon and elephant wisdom. Take care of it and don't spread it. Once this martial art is spread, you will be hunted down by the Great Mercy Temple. Chu Li smiled. Even if I spread it, others won't be able to cultivate it, right? That's right. Monk Hui Guang smiled. You're really smart. If others obtain this secret manual, it will be useless even if they don't know how to recite it. Every 3 goes to 4, and every 5 goes to 3. This is the reading method of this copy. Chu Li nodded solemnly. Monk Hui Guang said, only look at the first page, then the 5th, 10th, and 20th pages. You don't have to look at the rest. Chu Li smiled. It's really foolproof. Once someone with ulterior motives obtains the secret manual, they will only end up going mad. Monk Hui Guang shook his head. This goes against the meaning of mercy, but it is for the peace of the world. Those who do not understand the dermic base and cultivate the real dragon and elephant wisdom will be more terrifying than cultivating the fake one. They will die faster. Chu Li nodded slowly. Monk Hui Guang said, go back and read it yourself. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. You can also go to the Sutra Library to read the cultivation experience. The dragon and elephant wisdom has the most experience. Chu Li bowed with pressed palms. Monk Hui Guang said, as a new disciple of the temple, you are not allowed to leave the temple for 10 years. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and bowed with pressed palms. Dong! Dong! 2 bell tolls were heard, resounding in the sky above the Great Mercy Temple. Chu Li's omniscient mirror could not observe the entire Great Mercy Temple, so he did not know what was happening. He turned to look at Monk Huiguang. The young monks on a martial arts field stopped and left in a hurry. "Master, this is—" Chu Li asked. Monk Huiguang said, "2 bell tolls." Someone broke into the temple. Chu Li was surprised. Monk Huiguang said, "Every year, there are always people who want to make a name for themselves. They come to the Great Mercy Temple because they think they have great achievements. They want to defeat the Great Mercy Temple and achieve supreme prestige." Chu Li laughed. "Did someone really break into the Great Mercy Temple?" "Yes." Monk Huiguang nodded slowly. 200,000 years ago, there was a top-notch master who broke into the Great Mercy Temple and defeated all the masters. He left and became the world's #1. Chu Li was surprised. There really is such a person. Monk Huiguang sighed. "The world is big and full of wonders." Chu Li said, "Can we go and have a look?" "Let's go." Monk Huiguang scoffed. "I want to see who it is this time." All the monks on the martial arts field disappeared. When the master and disciple arrived at the entrance of the temple, it was already filled with people. There were 200 young monks standing in the open space outside the Great Mercy Temple. A handsome young man in a green robe stood in the center. He had his left hand behind his back, and his right hand was waving a folding fan. He looked at the monks around him calmly and shook his head. The Great Mercy Temple is just an undeserved reputation. Standing in front of him was a young monk with a squarish face and a look of righteousness. He said in a deep voice, "Young Master Mo, you're too arrogant. You'd better defeat this little monk first." Chu Li looked at Monk Huiguang. Monk Huiguang said gently, "It's your second senior brother, Ding Shi." Chu Li was surprised and nodded slowly. Although Monk Ding Shi was young, his cultivation level was unfathomable. He stood there like a mountain and looked majestic. Young Master Mo looked like his cultivation level was very low. One look at the two of them, and it was obvious who would win. However, Monk Ding Shi looked solemn and did not look down on them. Chu Li did not dare to be careless. He used the omniscient mirror, but found nothing. He stared at young Master Mo and listened for his aura. Chapter 26:09. Male. Sir Mo's aura was weak, and his breathing looked like a normal person's. However, Master Mo's divine ear was exceptional, and he instantly detected the abnormality of his aura. His breathing was as light as a normal person's, but it had an inexplicable rhythm. Novels, this rhythm was subtle, but it could not escape Master Mo's divine ear. A strange rhythm was mixed in with the breathing of ordinary people. If one listened carefully, they could vaguely hear the sound of a tsunami. Moreover, the sound of the tsunami was connected to the aura in his body. The aura in his body and his breathing seemed to be one. According to common sense, the activation of inner energy relied on the spirit, but the activation of his inner energy was integrated with his breathing. This was the abnormality. This was a very advanced breathing technique. When cultivated to a very high level, one would no longer need to rely on the spirit to activate inner energy. He was able to conclude at once that this breathing technique used breathing to stimulate the inner energy. Without stopping breathing, the inner energy would circulate endlessly. In this way, one would be cultivating at all times and would not be limited by the strength of one's mind. Ordinary people who cultivated martial arts were often limited by the strength of their spirit. After cultivating for a while, they would be exhausted and unable to continue. Therefore, this breathing technique would take a few times longer to cultivate than ordinary people. Naturally, the efficiency would increase greatly. 1 year of cultivation would be equivalent to 10 years of cultivation for others. It was similar to his own situation. He was able to rise so quickly because of his strong spirit. He could multitask and continuously activate inner energy, which was equivalent to 10 years of cultivation for others. Sir Mo's situation was the same. Moreover, this heart technique of his was even more magical. Listening to the faint sound of a tsunami, he felt an inexplicable chill. His intuition warned him to stay away from serene. He trusted his intuition the most. Even within the range of the golden light, he still trusted his intuition. This serene was extremely dangerous. Ding Ming came over. Junior brother Ding Ru. Chu Li bowed with pressed palms. Senior brother Ding Ming. Why is senior brother Ding Shi going against serene? This Moe Do has come to challenge senior brother Ding Shi. Ding Ming frowned. He has ill intentions. He must be prepared. Senior brother Ding Shi needs to be alert. Chu Li nodded slowly. Ding Shi gave him a firm and powerful feeling, while this Moe Do was erratic and unpredictable. One was like a boulder, while the other was like a cloud. Both of their styles were completely different, but it was hard to determine who was better. Chu Li turned to look at Monk Huiguang. Ding Ming said, Master, can senior brother Ding Shi win? Monk Huiguang shook his head slowly. He squinted his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. Master, Ding Ming called out in a low voice. Monk Huiguang glanced at him and said calmly, Let's watch. Ding Ming sighed at Chu Li. Looks like senior brother Ding Shi is in grave danger. Stop. Rumble. Molted by Shi Qing? Feed Ding Ming clasped his palms and acknowledged. Chu Li asked, Master, where did this Moe Do come from? If I am not wrong, he should be from Starcloud Island. Monk Huiguang said slowly. Ding Ming exclaimed, Starry Cloud Island? Chu Li fell into deep thought as he quickly searched for Starry Cloud Island in his mind. However, he could not find any records regarding Starry Cloud Island. Logically speaking, although Taishang Peak and Lucky Luck Sect could not be considered as the top sects, the two Sutra pavilions should have recorded most of the events that happened there. The Sutra pavilions of these two sects did not have anything to do with Starry Cloud Island. Ding Ming saw Chu Li's perplexed face and quickly explained, Starry Cloud Island is one of the 36 islands on the sea. Their martial arts are strange and different from the rest of the world's martial arts. It is impossible to guard against them. Chu Li asked, Why haven't I heard of them? Because they are secretive in their actions. They never reveal their names. Ding Ming scoffed. They hide their heads but show their tails. Their hearts are not bright enough. He continued, They are both righteous and evil in their actions. Moreover, there is no lack of top-notch masters among them. Previously, there was a disciple of Starry Cloud Island who came to challenge our temple and was beaten black and blue. Now, they are here for revenge. Monk Huiguang nodded slowly. Chu Li asked, What kind of unique martial arts does Starry Cloud Island have? Starry Cloud Technique. Ding Ming said softly, I heard that it is very powerful and is not inferior to our dragon elephant wisdom. This is indeed a unique skill. Monk Huiguang sighed softly. Using starlight to train the body and condense the sword. It can be used to swallow clouds and spit out mist, making it unpredictable. Make your move, Master Mo. Monk Ding Shi said. His square face was full of solemnity as he slowly made a starting gesture. I will defeat you first, then Ding Jian. These are all the masters of your great mercy temple, right? Moe Do chuckled and waved his folding fan. The dignified Great Mercy Temple is nothing more than this. Monk Ding Shi said in a low voice, Why use such a low-level method to provoke me? There are countless people in our temple who have a higher cultivation level than me. You have to defeat me first before we talk about anything else. Sorry for the offense. He did not want Moe Do to speak again and struck out with his palm. Swoosh! The fist turned into a golden light and shot towards Moe Do like lightning. Bang! The folding fan suddenly emitted a blue light that collided with the golden light. The thin folding fan blocked the fist. Then, with a gentle wave of the folding fan, Ding Shi slipped and retreated 2 meters. Moe Do was all smiles, and his movements were light and graceful. On the other hand, Ding Shi was clumsy like a boorish person who did not know exquisite techniques. He struck out with his fist again and instantly appeared in front of Moe Do. Chu Li was amazed. As expected of the dragon-elephant Prajna technique, Ding Shi looked clumsy and was not as graceful as Moe Do. It seemed like he was at a disadvantage, but his punches were like lightning and looked slow. On the other hand, Ido's folding fan looked relaxed, but he was actually giving it his all. The sparkle of stars flying cloud technique must be extremely pure, or else he would not have dared to block the fist force. The azure splendor was like his god-slaying thunder sword, but it was pure. Ding Shi's fist force was firm and pure, and it was also incomparably pure. When the two forces collided, it would depend on whose cultivation was better. Bang, 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 bang. The blue light and the golden light collided endlessly. In the end, the golden light won and steadily suppressed the blue light. The monks immediately smiled. Monk Huiguang shook his head and smiled as he turned to leave. Chu Li watched him leave and knew that he did not take Ido seriously. Ido only came to challenge Ding Shi and Ding Jian. Obviously, it only involved the masters of this generation and not the previous generation. Chu Li frowned. He felt that Ido was very dangerous and it was best to stay away from him. He slowly retreated and wanted to leave. Even though he was at a disadvantage, he was still as elegant as before. Ido chuckled. As expected of the second master of the Ding generation. I'll learn a thing or two from you next time. Suddenly, a blue light shot down from the sky and landed on his body. His figure suddenly expanded and turned into a flash of blue light. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Junior brother Ding Ru. Monk Ding Ming suddenly cried out. Everyone was stunned. Monk Ding Shi looked over. Monk Ding Ming hurriedly called out, Senior brother Ding Shi. Junior brother Ding Ru was just captured by the one with the surname Mo. What happened? Monk Ding Shi took a step forward and stood in front of him. Ding Ming pointed to a distance. The one with the surname Mo grabbed junior brother Ding Ru in a flash and then disappeared. Chapter 26:10. Greet senior brother Ding Jian. Monk Ding Shi's voice rang in Ding Ming's ears. Ding Ming turned around and ran. Like a gust of wind, he dashed into the inner temple and entered an old monastery. He shouted at a short and fat middle-aged monk in the monastery. Senior martial brother Ding Jian. The middle-aged monk was short and fat with a round figure. His round face made him look like the manager of a hotel. He chuckled and retracted his fist. I've made myself clear. A guy from Star Cloud Island came to challenge senior brother Ding Shi and senior brother Ding Jian. He couldn't defeat senior brother Ding Shi, but he snatched junior brother Ding Ru away before he left. Ding Ming said hurriedly. Monk Ding Jian smiled. That's strange. It's always been Star Cloud Island style to leave when they can't win. Why do they have to snatch someone away this time? That's right. Junior brother Ding Ru probably doesn't recognize him. Ding Ming nodded. Let's not talk about enmity. He quickly said, Senior brother Ding Jian, let's hurry. We won't be able to catch up to them if we delay any longer. Senior brother Ding Shi is already chasing after them. I wonder if he can catch up to that guy with the surname Mo. Monk Ding Jian waved his chubby hand and smiled. There's no rush. He can't escape. Senior brother Ding Shi is risking his life. How can he not catch up to him? Ding Ming stomped his feet anxiously, but there was nothing he could do. Monk Ding Jian was the eldest senior brother, and his martial arts was strong. A novice monk like him could only listen. Since there's no enmity, I'm sure the guy won't dare to kill junior brother. Ding Jian smiled. What he wants to do? It'll take some thinking. Senior brother Ding Jian. Ding Ming was furious. Ding Jian shook his head and laughed. Ding Ming, you're really warm-hearted. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash. The next moment, he appeared next to Chu Li. Chu Li's chest caved in as he was hit by a palm. He hung on a tree and spat out blood. He was getting weaker. Ido and two young men in blue robes were attacking Monk Ding Shi. The three of them were glowing with a blue light, vaguely connecting with the starlight in the sky. Their folding fans shot out beams of blue light that looked like blades of light. It was as if three stars were fighting against Ding Shi. The surging power of the stars was so strong that it seemed to be tangible, constantly cutting at Ding Shi. Monk Ding Shi's body released golden light that enveloped his entire body. No matter how the three of them attacked him, he didn't budge an inch. He was truly as firm as a boulder. Ding Shi suddenly slammed his palm toward Chu Li, and the golden palm force landed on Chu Li's body. He raised his voice and shouted, "Junior brother Dingru, are you all right?" Chu Li coughed a few times and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He shook his head helplessly. "I won't die yet." He had already realized that this Mo Edo actually had the intention to kill, not to exchange pointers, but to kill Monk Ding Shi. He did not know why Mo Edo had such a huge grudge against Monk Ding Shi. He saw that Monk Hui Guang had already left, and Mo Edo was in grave danger, so he wanted to leave as well. He had only taken 2 steps when his hair stood on end, and he pushed Ding Ming away. Ding Ming was pushed away by him, avoiding Mo Edo's palm. Mo Edo's martial art was mysterious and strange. He turned and caught Ding Ming, and they disappeared in an instant. His cultivation level dispersed and turned into the strange power of the marrow cleansing technique to strengthen his body. However, no matter how strong his body was, he still did not have inner energy. He could not activate the life and death scripture in time and was caught by Mo Edo. Mo Edo's palm force surged and instantly sealed all the acupuncture points on his body. In the next moment, he had already leaped 10 miles away at an incredible speed. Under the observation of the omniscient mirror, Monk Ding Shi was like a stream of light, catching up in the blink of an eye. There were 2 young men in blue robes lying in ambush in the forest. When they saw Mo Edo coming over, they quickly came out to greet him. The 3 of them blocked Monk Ding Shi together, while Mo Edo gave Chu Li a palm and threw him into the forest. Chu Li felt like he was a puppet that was being manipulated at will. He had no control over himself. The seemingly light palm strike had already broken his ribs and crushed his heart. It was meant to kill him. The soul lotus was indeed powerful. Although his heart was crushed, he could still hang on to his last breath. He had a flash of inspiration and suddenly began to circulate the marrow cleansing technique to see if it could save his life. A moment later, the force of the marrow cleansing technique circulated and slowly fell on his heart. This force enveloped his heart, and it began to slowly recover. Chu Li was overjoyed. He did not expect the marrow cleansing technique to be so effective. Once the soul lotus was injured, it was extremely difficult to recover without the blood red powder. He did not expect the marrow cleansing technique to recover so quickly. "Junior brother Dingru, you go first," Monk Ding Shi said loudly. Mo Edo and the other 2 waved their fans like knives. The blue light flashed brighter and brighter. They were fighting with their lives on the line. They knew that they did not have much time. The Great Mercy Temple was not a decoration. Masters would soon arrive. If they could not kill Monk Ding Shi in a short time, they would not have another chance to do so. "Die!" Mo Edo snorted angrily. Suddenly, 3 starlights flickered in the sky and fell straight into the bodies of Mo Edo and the other 2. Then, the 3 of them emitted a blue light. Their bodies could not be seen clearly. Only 3 balls of blue light danced like flames. Bang, bang, bang. Monk Ding Shi forcefully blocked the 3's palm strikes and retreated more than 10 steps. A deep trench extended in front of him. The surrounding soil tumbled like a deep trench plowed by an iron plow. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The 3's palm energy was like thunder and lightning. It directly penetrated his protective energy barrier. The power was shocking and injured him. Chu Li frowned. The martial arts of these 3 people were a little familiar. It was similar to the flying star technique. Could the starlight flying cloud technique be related to the flying star technique? He kept urging the marrow cleansing technique to repair his heart and body. His ribs gradually returned to their original positions. His muscles automatically adjusted their positions. Chu Li, who was observing with the omniscient mirror, felt that it was extremely magical. "Die!" The 3 of them roared and once again turned into blue light to entangle Monk Ding Shi. Monk Ding Shi's cultivation was profound. Even though he was at a disadvantage, he still persisted. His movement technique was strangely fast, and his strength was extraordinary. Moreover, he used seemingly clumsy moves to firmly defend himself, not allowing his defenses to be broken. No matter how violent the three of them were, he was on the verge of collapse, but he didn't fall. Chu Li shook his head. Monk Dingshi obviously had a trump card, but if this went on, he might not have the chance to use it. He looked up in the direction of the Great Mercy Temple and felt strange. Could it be that the older generation of the Great Mercy Temple just watched as these three presumptuous people killed the disciples of the Great Mercy Temple? Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in the void. Chu Li saw a fat monk appear beside Monk Dingjian. He raised his voice and said, "Second junior brother, eldest senior brother, go and see third junior brother first," Monk Dingjian said in a low voice. Monk Dingjian glanced at Chu Li and his fat face darkened. Just as he was about to step in front of Chu Li, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him with a mocking smile on his face. Monk Dingjian frowned and stopped in his tracks. He said coldly, "It's you, Bai Zhu Guang." The middle-aged man was thin and slender. He had an awl-like face and a pair of long and narrow eyes that were as sharp as two curved blades. "Ding Jian, today is the day you die." Bai Zhu Guang put on a fake smile. "What a joke." Monk Ding Jian's fat face burst into laughter. He shook his head and said, "This is the Great Mercy Temple's territory." He appeared in front of Chu Li in a flash and stretched out his fat hand to help Chu Li. Chapter 26:11. Chu Li thought that even if he was at his peak, he would not be able to avoid this palm energy. Bang! Monk Ding Jian clenched his fist, and a golden light shot out from his fist, hitting the blue light. Chu Li was hit by the blue light. He thought that he would be severely injured or even killed, but it was like a gentle breeze. Bang, 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 bang. Bai Zhu Guang kept attacking Chu Li with his palms, while Monk Ding Jian kept blocking with his fists. Their palm energy and fist energy collided in front of Chu Li and disappeared. "Ha!" Bai Zhu Guang laughed as he attacked. "Ding Jian, stupid monk, you're quite kind. I'm going to kill him in front of you today." Monk Ding Jian said coldly, "He's a snake and a scorpion. He's not a son. He's compassionate, not a hypocrite like you." Bai Zhu Guang sneered. "You're so stupid that you can die." His palms became faster and faster, forming a continuous blue light that headed for Chu Li's chest. Chu Li was terrified. He kept activating the marrow cleansing technique, and his body recovered faster. He had been silently calculating all this while. Suddenly, he shouted, "Eldest brother!" Monk Ding Jian met his gaze and instantly understood. He immediately punched at Bai Zhu Guang. Bai Zhu Guang did not expect Monk Ding Jian to dare do this. He sneered and gritted his teeth. Let's see who dies first. He had the righteous energy barrier. Even if he was hit by Monk Ding Jian's palm, he could still take it. Moreover, Monk Ding Jian would not just watch him kill this little monk, so he gambled on his judgment. When the blue light touched Chu Li, he suddenly disappeared and appeared on a distant treetop. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Although God's limbs was fast, it was also a heavy burden on the body. Bam! Bai Zhu Guang suffered a punch and was instantly sent flying towards Chu Li. However, he landed on Monk Dingshi's side. "Switch positions." Bai Zhu Guang roared after he spat out blood in the air. Mo Ito and the other two rushed toward Monk Ding Jian, while Bai Zhu Guang shot toward Monk Dingshi. Monk Ding Jian snorted angrily. Bai Zhu Guang, how despicable. Bai Zhu Guang's palm strike was continuous, and a blue light shrouded Dingshi. Dingshi's golden light immediately dimmed. Ding Jian snorted and was about to use his ultimate move to help Dingshi. Dingshi hurriedly said, "Eldest senior brother, I'll do it myself." The golden light around him suddenly shrank back into his body. Bam, 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 bam. Amidst the flashes of blue light, several palm strikes landed on his chest. But he stood steadily, glaring angrily, like a Vajra glaring angrily, slapping towards Bai Zhu Guang's palm. Boom! It was like a clap of thunder. The two of them each took 2 steps back. Sand and pebbles flew around them, and dust billowed. After the dust settled, There was not a single blade of grass or sand within 10 meters of them. The ground had sunk by 1 foot. Chu Li was speechless. If he did not have the omniscient mirror, he would not have been able to see these people's moves clearly. They were too fast. Even if he was at his peak, he would not be able to block more than a few moves. Ding Jian and Ding Shi were the best of the Ding generation in the Great Mercy Temple, but they could not do anything to Mo Edo and Bai Zhuguang. It seemed that Star Cloud Island was stronger and more arrogant than he had imagined. They wanted to kill the Great Mercy Temple's disciple in their territory. Did they really think that the Great Mercy Temple was a pushover? Son, the higher-ups of the Great Mercy Temple did not make a move now, but it did not mean that they would not make a move. He thought of something and used the omniscient mirror to observe his surroundings, but he did not find anything. There was nothing strange in the lush forest around him, and there was no other ambush. Could it be that Star Cloud Island only sent these 4 people? He frowned and suddenly floated to the top of a tree. Facing the gentle breeze, he activated his divine ear. All the movements around him appeared in his ears, and the surrounding scene appeared in his mind. He could see the surrounding situation through sound, and it was clearer than seeing it with his own eyes. His expression suddenly changed, and he shouted, "Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, I can't do it." As he spoke, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face quickly turned pale. "Third junior brother." The 2 of them shouted. They could no longer care about Bai Zhuguang and Mo Edo. With a flash of golden light, they appeared next to Chu Li and held his hands, channeling to protect his life. Chu Li held their wrists tightly, and in a flash, the 3 of them disappeared from the spot. The next moment, the 3 of them appeared in the martial arts field in the inner temple of the Great Mercy Temple. The limb of God was magical, and it could directly pass through formations, which was far better than void diversion. Third junior brother, Monk Ding Jian and Monk Ding Shi looked at him in surprise. They had already ascertained that Chu Li had recovered from his injuries. Chu Li took a deep breath and said, "Senior brothers, there are many masters hiding in the dark outside. It should be the seniors of our temple." The 2 of them smiled. Chu Li shook his head slowly. "It's not the seniors of our temple. It's the masters of Star Cloud Island, and they all carry the aura of a tsunami." His heaven's ear heard the sound of the tsunami in the breeze. It was very soft, but it was very clear to him. It was the same hard technique as Mo Edo and Bai Zhuguang, and the soft sound of the tsunami was continuous. He could hear 100 breaths. The sound of the tsunami was indistinct, and if there were not so many, he might not have been able to hear it. Through these soft breathing sounds, he could determine that they were much more powerful than Mo Edo and Bai Zhuguang. His thoughts were like electricity, and he instantly saw through Star Cloud Island's plan. By killing Chu Li, they would lure Monk Ding Jian and Monk Ding Shi, and by killing Ding Jian and Monk Ding Shi, they would lure the other masters of Great Mercy Temple. Star Cloud Island was obviously preparing to massacre Great Mercy Temple, and there might be other masters hiding in the dark that his heaven's ear could not hear. How many? Monk Ding Jian's fat face darkened, and he said slowly, "Did you hear it through your heaven's ear?" Chu Li nodded slowly. "If it wasn't for my heaven's ear, I wouldn't have discovered them. They're too good at hiding, but no matter how good they are, they still have to breathe. There are at least 100 of them, and all of them are better than Mo Edo and Bai Zhuguang. Those are the masters of the previous generation of Star Cloud Island." Monk Ding Shi's face was full of seriousness and solemnity. Monk Ding Jian touched his chin and said slowly, "Bai Zhuguang is the first of his generation, and the ones who are stronger can only be from the previous generation or 2 generations. Star Cloud Island has always been ambitious, and this time, they finally can't help but make a move? That must be the case. We have to underestimate the enemy." Monk Ding Shi said in a low voice, "Eldest senior brother, let's report to master." Monk Ding Jian looked at Chu Li. "Then I'll trust third junior brother this time." Chu Li pressed his palms together. Monk Ding Jian pressed his palms together, then took a step forward and disappeared. Monk Ding Shi's expression was much gentler, and he even smiled. Third junior brother, are your injuries serious? Blame me for not being careful. Chu shook his head and smiled. How can I blame second senior brother? They were meticulous in their plan, and they were unprepared. Monk Ding sure shook his head. He felt that it was still his responsibility to cause Chu to suffer for no reason. If it was not for his third junior brother's cleverness, his life might have been in danger this time. Monk Hui Guang and Monk Ding Jian suddenly appeared. Chu pressed his palms together and bowed. Monk Hui Guang looked him up and down a few times, then let out a sigh of relief and patted his shoulder. Dingru, well done. Chu smiled. Monk Hui Guang said, it is indeed as you said. This time, Star Cloud Island is invading us on a large scale. Their intentions are sinister, and we almost fell into their trap. Chapter 26:12. Chu smiled. I was lucky. This is the power of divine power. Monk Hui Guang sighed. Divine power or martial arts, it's really hard to choose. Chu nodded. There were many masters from Star Cloud Island this time, and most of them were from the older generation. Even if Ding Jian and Ding Shi were the top masters of the Ding generation, they still did not have the upper hand against the older masters. Their cultivation level was already unfathomable to Chu. If he did not have Heaven's ear and God's limbs, he would definitely be in danger. Master, this is a little strange. Monk Ding Jian frowned and touched his bald head. Logically, it's impossible for so many top masters from Star Cloud Island to come here. What is Sea Garrison for? Monk Hui Guang said. The elders in the temple had the same idea. They wanted to capture a master from Star Cloud Island to interrogate, but they saw that it was impossible and retreated, so they couldn't capture him in time. Monk Ding Jian said, then should I go to see Garrison Taidong? Monk Hui Guang shook his head. Let's wait and see. I've already sent a letter to ask. Monk Ding Jian's thick eyebrows were knitted together. It was completely different from his usual jovial appearance. His round face was full of worry. Monk Ding sure said, Mo Edo and Bai Zhuguang's cultivation level has greatly improved. It's obvious that they had a fortuitous encounter. Monk Ding Jian scoffed. There are countless fortuitous encounters at sea, and these two are extremely lucky. It's not surprising. If it was not for their fortuitous encounter that greatly improved their martial arts, the two of them could easily defeat them. Bai Zhuguang was defeated by him, but now they were evenly matched. It was really frustrating. However, this was the way of the world. Things did not always go according to one's wishes. Monk Ding sure saw that Chu was confused and explained, Third junior brother, the visitors from the sea are mostly greedy and bloodthirsty people. They live in secret places and cannot be found, so they act unscrupulously and without any scruples. They come to the land to commit all sorts of crimes, and after plundering everything, they return to the sea and come and go as they please. Back then, the imperial court built 4 sea garrison cities to prevent the invasion of the visitors from the sea. The disciples of the Great Mercy Temple were duty-bound to participate in the defense of the sea garrison cities. Chu suddenly understood. He had heard of the Jinhai city. Taidong, Dongdong, Cici, and Xuanxi were the 4 Jinhai cities that guarded the coastline. They were the most elite forces of the imperial court. Back then, the imperial court had fallen apart because they had expended too many elite soldiers in the Jinhai city. As a result, there was a vacuum in the city, which was then taken advantage of by ambitious people. Now that the northern region was in chaos, the flames of war were everywhere, and the people of the 4 sea garrison cities were restless. He had already deduced that the reason why a large number of experts from Starry Cloud Island could come to the Great Mercy's Temple this time was because something had happened in Calming Sea City. Master, young Master He of the 5th Thunder Peak, is here to see you. Young Monk Ding Ming arrived swiftly. He pushed the door open and bowed with his palms pressed together. Monk Hui Guang turned around and left. Monk Ding Jian brought Ding Shi and Chu with him as they followed him out of the temple. He Jin's green robes fluttered in the wind with a long sword hanging at his waist. He had a carefree and elegant demeanor as he cupped his fists and said with a smile, "Master Hui Guang, sorry for the disturbance." Monk Hui Guang pressed his palms together and extended his hand to invite him in. "Brother He, come in and talk." He Ji nodded at Chu Li and smiled. "How about I introduce a disciple to you?" "Great master." "Thank you, Brother He. This way, please." Monk Hui Guang said solemnly. He Jin walked into the temple with a smile and arrived at his meditation courtyard. It was old and weathered with ancient trees. It was a peaceful and calm place. He Jin sat by the stone table in the courtyard and took a cup of tea from Ding Ming. He took a sip and his smiling face darkened. He put down the teacup and sighed. "Great master, I have bad news." Monk Hui Guang sat opposite him, while Chu Li, steadfast stone, and the other two stood behind Monk Hui Guang and listened quietly. "Please speak." Monk Hui Guang extended his hand and said. He Jin sighed. "Calming Sea City of Great East has fallen. Is that true?" Monk Hui Guang stood up immediately. His eyes were bright and his gray robes fluttered. He Jin said with a serious expression, "How would I dare to lie about this?" Monk Hui Guang sat down slowly with a heavy expression. Monk Ding Jian said in a low voice, "Master, if that's the case, I'm afraid that the senior brothers in Calming Sea City of Great East." Monk Hui Guang picked up his teacup and took a sip. The lid of the teacup trembled slightly. Monk Ding Shi's body flashed with a golden light. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. He Jin said, "I only found out about this bad news after receiving a message from a disciple before his death." "Brother He, have you been to Calming Sea City of Great East?" Monk Hui Guang put down his teacup and regained his composure. He Jin shook his head. "I came here first." "Master, I'll go check it out first." Monk Ding Shi pressed his palms together. Monk Hui Guang looked at him and shook his head. "Ding Jian, you make a trip." "Yes, master." Monk Ding Jian pressed his palms together and patted Monk Ding Shi's shoulder. "Second junior brother, as the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. I'll go and find out if senior brother Ding he is dead or alive." "Yes." Monk Ding Shi took a deep breath and said, "Eldest senior brother, if there's danger, focus on your safety. Life and death are determined by fate." Monk Ding Jian nodded. Chu Li said, "Master, I'll go with eldest senior brother." He guessed that Monk Ding he had a close relationship with Ding Shi. Without waiting for Monk Hui Guang to reject, he quickly said, "Although my cultivation level is low, I'm good at escaping." "All right." Hui Guang nodded and took out a piece of paper from his inner pocket. "This is to be passed down to you. Take it and learn it on the way." Chu Li took it and pressed his palms together. "Thank you, master." Hui Guang said, "Go and return quickly. Don't be greedy. Come back after you've found out the situation in Great EC Garrison. Don't move around." Monk Ding Jian said, "Don't worry, master. I understand." He pressed his palms together and bowed to He Jin. Then he pulled Chu Li's sleeve and fluttered away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. This Chu Li is not a simple person. He Jin looked at their disappearing silhouettes and turned to Monk Hui Guang with a smile. "I've investigated before. He ascended from the lower realm to the outland and then ascended from there to here." Monk Hui Guang nodded slowly. Naturally, he had investigated Chu Li's background before accepting him as a disciple. It was not easy to enter the Great Mercy Temple. It was impossible for an unknown person to enter. Monk Ding Jian suddenly sped up and moved through the void. In an instant, he arrived at the peak of a mountain. Chu Li glanced at the paper in his hand and imprinted it into his mind. "Do you remember it?" Monk Ding Jian asked. Chu Li nodded. Monk Ding Jian took out the paper and gently clenched his fist. When he stretched out his palm again, his palm was already a pile of powder. A breeze with a fishy smell swept the powder away and it drifted away. He pointed to a small black dot in the distance. "That's Great East Sea Garrison." Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe and saw a towering city built on a cliff. Below the cliff was a vast ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see. Even the omniscient mirror could not see the end of it. The huge city was like a ferocious beast that was entrenched at the bottom of a cliff, overlooking the vast sea. The vastness of it was intimidating. Chu Li speculated that the person who built the city here must be a master who was proficient in architecture and formations. It was not an ordinary person to be able to create such a deterrent effect with the terrain and appearance alone. Monk Ding Jian said, "You can stay here and study martial arts. I'll be back soon." Chu Li frowned. "Senior brother Ding Jian, you don't have to come any closer. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.